Good afternoon, everyone. Gandang hapon po sa lahat. This meeting is now called to order. Before we continue, let me direct the committee secretary to acknowledge our resource persons for this afternoon.
Good afternoon. May we acknowledge the presence of Undersecretary Tonisita O'Malley and Undersecretary Alain Del Pasqua from DepEd, Attorney Richie Pareñas from the Civil Service Commission, Attorney Norman T. Danoy, ASEC Anelito De Leon from the DND, Rear Admiral Samuel Z. Felix, Brigadier General Rolando Arodil, Guido Alfredo A. Delgado from UP Vanguard, Gilbert Reyes, Attorney Arthur J. Henota from TESDA, Attorney Luz Biminda Rosales, and General Ramon Santos from PASO, and Ms. Rose Balgos from Philippine Confederation of ROTC Association Incorporated. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ComSec. Once again, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. This is the second hearing on the reinstatement of mandatory ROTC in our basic education and possibly also in tertiary education. During the first hearing, we concluded that there are a lot of issues that are still pending and needs clarification from both the Department of National Defense and the Department of Education. And we also concluded that there needs to be a very close working relationship and coordination between the two agencies. Again, Department of National Defense and Department of Education. These two line agencies are the most essential agencies in the thorough execution of this proposed measure. The reason for that is the DND will be the primary agency creating the curriculum in line with the Department of Education, but it is through our schools that this curriculum will be rolled out. So we're talking about 11,000 schools as we the number of senior high school amounts to about 11,000 schools, and we need to make sure that the mechanism to prevent what has happened in the past will not happen again when we roll out this proposed measure. Let me just pull up a slide. During the last hearing, we have a few items that we need to discuss thoroughly. Just to give you a glimpse of the process here in the Senate, once I sponsor this bill, a lot of issues will be discussed on the floor, and we have to make sure that all of these issues are tackled and are recorded in our deliberation. That's why we took note of the pending items that were not discussed, thoroughly discussed during the last hearing, and we want to make sure that these issues are talked about or are discussed in this hearing and are recorded in our minutes of the meeting. The items that are left over for the Department of Education and also the DND, I think this is a joint effort between DepEd and DND. Number one are the safeguards to prevent hazing, abuses, and corruption. Number two, how much do we need? The budget that we need in order to roll out effectively this mandatory ROTC. Number three, there are also issues of space. I think last time members of our private schools raised the issue of space availability, and we also need to discuss this thoroughly in this hearing. Number four, the curriculum. We need to understand thoroughly what are the components of the proposed curriculum. And specifically for DND, there was an issue raised on possible violation of international treaties and international agreements. We need to understand thoroughly if we are violating any international treaties and protocols that consequently the Senate approved. And lastly, an update of NSTP from CHED. CHED was tasked to give us an update on the performance, impact, as well as benefits of NSTP. NSTP was enacted in 2001 and made ROTC as an optional component. We need to understand also whether this transition from mandatory to optional, and as well as the entire NSTP law, whether this NSTP law benefits the country or not. These are the main items that the chair wants to propound on in this hearing, and other issues can be deliberated later on. And if you have any other issues outside of this, what was flashed on the screen, we can also talk about that later on. With that, we will start with the Department of National Defense as well as the AFP to enlighten us on the items that were left behind during the last hearing. General Deal, you want to start off?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We will be presenting, sir, the key initiatives and our way ahead for the restoration of our mandatory ROTC program as proposed by the DND AFP in grades 11 and 12, sir. So the scope of my presentation will be as follows, sir. Next slide, please. Okay. I'll give you a general concept of how ROTC will be administered in grades 11 and 12. I'll also discuss the key points of our measures and guidelines to address hazing, abuse, and corruption in the conduct of the program. And then I'll briefly give an overview of the manpower, funding, and other logistical requirements that would be needed in the conduct of the program. And finally, I'll give you also a briefer, sir, on the Advanced Citizen Training Program. It's a pilot program that DepEd and the DND AFP has already formulated for the past 2 years already, sir, to come up with a, to sort of rehearse, okay, the conduct of this program in lieu of the passage of the bill into law. Okay, next slide. So, to refresh everyone's memory on what the President had wanted, he succinctly stated in his State of the Nation address in 2016 that he wants to strengthen the ROTC program to instill love of country and good citizenship in our young people of today. He has been very emphatic about this even in his subsequent speeches, and he has explicitly said that he wanted to restore ROTC as presented and proposed by the DND AFP in grades 11 and 12. Okay. Next. This is about an overview of the general concept of ROTC implementation in grades 11 and 12. So number one, it will be integrated in the senior high school curriculum, definitely. So not unlike in the past that it's done on Saturdays or Sundays or weekends, now it's going to be part of the curriculum or the schedule of the student during weekdays. The only time that the students will be doing it on weekends or when needed is during practical exercises when they are going to do it in military camps. Secondly, the program instruction, the outline of which I'll expound later, will be jointly crafted. In this case, we have formulated a program of instruction or curriculum, as the DepEd would call it, for ROTC in grades 11 and 12, and this will be piloted in the Advanced Citizen Training Program. I'll also expound on that later. Also, one of the features that will create a joint interagency managed committee. However, this will be discussed more or articulated more in the joint implementing guidelines, rules, and regulations. At the DND AFP level, through one of our letter directives we have already published, it is already mandated that there will be an oversight committee at the level of the general headquarters of the AFP to monitor, to oversee, monitor, and evaluate the conduct of the ROTC program. It was originally intended for the ACTP, but if this becomes law, those guidelines will also be applicable. Next is the establishment of a dedicated office or command for the supervision and the administration of the ROTC. Currently, this function is carried out by our major services, reserve commands in the Army, Navy, and Air Force as part of its functions aside from reserve force administration. So they're handling both reservists and ROTC cadets. So our proposal is to have a separate office or command to conduct this, to administer the program. One of the contentions that was raised was on the issue of the enlistment of basic ROTC graduates, and we would like to emphasize again that we will not enlist ROTC graduates if they have not yet attained the age of 18, and that has already been, that is a process that is being followed even up to now for the current ROTC program. So if and when a cadet graduates from the basic ROTC and he or she is not yet 18 by the time of they graduate, the enlistment orders will specifically stipulate that the effectivity of his or her enlistment will be on his or her 18th birthday. And finally, the provisions we are proposing on incentives and exemptions in the proposed bill. Next slide, please. So these are the logistical requirements that will be needed by each ROTC unit. Okay, number one, of course, initially, as agreed upon with the DepEd, we will be using the students' PE uniforms for their ROTC training, although there are proposals to include later on in the budget provision of AFP military uniforms as part of their the program. Then drill rifles will definitely be used, whether there will be actual the actual rifles or even the so-called dummy rifles. We have no issues with regards to the dummy rifles, sir, because in our engagements, for example, with the U.S. ROTC Cadet Command, even the ROTC units, they use dummy rifles. They have M16s which have been decommissioned and converted into dummy M16s, wherein their magazines and their charging handles are already welded into the dummy rifle and simulating the actual weight of the rifle. So there are no moving parts. There's nothing there that you can use to convert to an actual rifle. So even the U.S. is using that for their training of their ROTC cadets. Okay. Then, of course, the establishment of an ROTC building for the facilities in a particular senior high school. ROTC training equipment like first aid kits, disaster response training equipment, okay, maps and compasses for land navigation, and all those other stuff for practical exercises. Office equipment and logistical requirements, including mobility, support for the publication and production of manuals, materials, and books, appropriate support for active and even reservists who will be serving as instructors. The budget for this is already, we already have a budget for the pilot implementation to the tune of about 211 million for 100 senior high schools. However, it must be noted, sir, that it includes the capital outlay we need for the establishment or creation of of DMSTs, Department of Military Science and Tactics offices in the senior high schools. So subsequent, if this will be adopted, okay, anyway, it's still undergoing a vetting process at the DND AFP level. It will be, if it will be adopted, the subsequent budget will be lower than what is estimated for now. Okay. Okay, next. Sir, I'd like to point out that the budget is separate from what the DepEd is also proposing, sir. Then, as mentioned, sir, these are the salient points of the guidelines on addressing hazing, abuse, and corruption. We already gave you, sir, a draft of the implementing guidelines, rules, and regulations of on addressing hazing, abuse, and corruption, which we, the DepEd, and the DND AFP Technical Working Group has formulated, sir. And these are the salient points of those guidelines, sir. So those guidelines apply to all the instructors, the implementers of the ROTC, and shall cover grade 11 and of course grade 12 in the senior high schools. Then there shall be created a grievance committee which will have procedures in all schools, and it will be stipulated in the joint IGRR. The said provisions, as discussed with DepEd, conforms to the child protection policy of the department, sir. AFP personnel also will be governed and covered by the Articles of Wars. As mentioned in the previous hearing, we have already specific guidelines and procedures, regulations covering our military personnel. And then the DepEd personnel will be covered by DepEd Order Number 49, Series of 2006. So the procedures on the prosecution of admin cases of DepEd personnel, sir. Okay. On manpower proposals, we do realize the magnitude of the manpower requirements given the number of senior high schools. So our proposal on the AP side is to create positions in the AP to oversee and exercise responsibility in the conduct of the ROTC, or at the AP level and down to our operational level, sir. Then definitely, sir, we have all agreed on this, sir. We will be tapping our reservists, okay, who will be called to active duty for a period, let's say 2 years, as provided in Republic Act 7077, or put them on active duty training status, okay, to serve as instructors in the ROTC units. Then we will be programming, of course, the annual training of all these ROTC instructors, including refresher training and competency build-up of these instructors. On the DepEd side, as previously discussed with DepEd, they have proposed a creation of a plantilla position at the division level with similar functions as to what we have proposed on the AAP side. Next. To give a background on the Advanced Citizen Training Program, as mentioned, okay, we took off from the pronouncement of the President in his first State of the Nation address. Immediately after that, sir, a cabinet action decision was handed down by the Office of the President to Secretary DepEd and Secretary of National Defense. So we jointly agreed to come up with a pilot program to ensure that we will be ready for the full implementation of ROTC in grades 11 and 12 should the law be passed. And we called it Advanced Citizen Training Program, or ACTP. So on 7 February, when the bill was presented to the President during the 12th Cabinet meeting and it was endorsed to Congress, eventually on 22 February 2017, House Bill number 5113 was filed by Deputy Speaker Raneo Abo of Batangas, okay, proposing or in total, the DND AFP bill. So from May 2017 to date, we have formulated, number one, sir, a joint curriculum or program instruction for the 2 years of the pilot implementation in grades 11 and 12. Secondly, we have identified 100 senior high schools. Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We have identified 100 senior high schools, all public senior high schools, to be part of the pilot implementation for this ACTP. It's nationwide, covers all regions except as agreed upon ARMM, because at that time when we were formulating, the Marawi crisis was ensuing. So it's not for any other reason, but that is what was recommended to us in the coming up with the list of the schools. So and then finally we came up with a draft memorandum of agreement signed by both secretaries for this pilot implementation. It has not just taken off last semester, but we plan to implement that in grades 11, 12 in this coming school year, sir. Okay. So basically, sir, meron pa? Yeah. See, this is the features of the program instructional curriculum. I will not delve into the details of each semester. There are 4 semesters for 2 semesters for each year. Okay? But these are the features and the salient modules that will be covered in the curriculum. Number 1, it will be heavy on values formation and character building. We have always subscribed to the belief that ROTC has been a very viable program of government to instill discipline, to build character, and to infuse the values that we should be infusing in our youth today, including nationalism and patriotism. Of course, leadership, developing leadership skills is a hallmark of any military training. Even at the enlisted level, we have small unit leaders, and they are given responsibilities to exercise that kind of leadership even at the tactical level. Of course, civic consciousness and community involvement, so that they will not be detached from serving in serving their communities. Disaster preparedness is also one hallmark of the program of instruction. We have tabulated it about 22 hours per semester are modules or subjects which deal with disaster preparedness. And of course, as we always mention, sir, we have survival and life skills integrated in a competency build-up of each basic ROTC student or cadet. And of course, the basic military skills of lead, move, navigate, shoot, and communicate. These are basic soldierly skills that we want to impart even at the ROTC program of instruction. So basically, sir, that's my last slide, sir. That covers all the. I hope that covers all the requirements that you have asked in the last hearing. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, General, and thank you for this very thorough as well as very detailed presentation. Definitely this presentation enlightened us further on how this proposal will be rolled out in the future. You've answered a lot of the leftover questions from last hearings. But I also want to further propound on some things in your presentation, especially on the budget, General. No? You mentioned earlier that initially DepEd and DND budgeted about 211 million for the 100 senior high schools. If you do a simple math, one school will cost about 2.1 million pesos. So if we have 11,000 senior high schools, that will cost about 23 billion pesos. Is that an accurate amount that we need to allocate 23 billion pesos in order to satisfy the logistical requirements to roll out this program?
As I mentioned, sir, we are vetting these figures because our assumption when we formulated the budget was that these requirements it's like we're starting from zero in a particular school. Not unlike now that we already have existing DMSTs or other training facilities and equipment in our ROTC units. So once we roll out all the initial requirements, the subsequent budget will be much lower than that. And we are going to be doing a tabletop exercise with the DND on that to thresh out the particular details of this budget.
Is this going to be requested by DepEd or by DND? Since this will be rolled out in the schools, I would assume the logistical requirements will be based in the schools, of which DepEd is a custodian of those schools. So I would assume DepEd will be requesting the amounts. I just want to be clarified whether DepEd or...
There's an amount that we will be requesting, sir. Okay. The amount this amount is more on our part, sir. Then some of the requirements like that will be requested by the DepEd. I think they will expound on it, sir. They have their own budget proposal for it. But these are initial figures, sir.
The reason for that question is I want to make sure that accountability is very clear. No? When you request, assuming the working figure is 23 billion, then we have to be very clear who will be the requesting agency and the custodian of those equipment, the logistical requirements.
Most of the equipments are the military equipment that are needed, sir. So definitely, it's the AFP will be the custodian of this, sir. Like you're talking about, sir, like compasses. You're talking about like disaster response equipment that can also be utilized in an actual emergency, not only for training, sir.
Okay. Because if the working figure general is 23 billion, then we need to itemize that later on. Definitely one of the basic questions that will be asked on the floor is, magkano ba ang kailangan natin to roll out this program? I'm sure Yusek Umali is quite familiar with the how the legislators will try to understand this program, especially during the budget season. This will be requested again. On a later date, I would really like to see a much detailed document on the budget and how much do we need to roll out this program. Okay, I think that is a basic element of any proposal. And
we will do that, sir.
Mr. Chair, I think Yusek Aline Del Pascua has some comments possibly on that.
If anyone can enlighten us on the budgetary requirements, that will be Yusek?
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, when it comes to the DepEd and when it comes to the budget proposal here, since there will be two agencies who will be handling the implementation of the subject of the bill, then it would have also two agencies have separate budgets, and two agencies will be implementing two separate budgets. In the case of DepEd, for example, Mr. Chair, if we will be constructing proposals for ROTC offices in every school, that would be 11,000 schools, and that would be about 2 million per school if we are looking at about 1 or 2 classrooms per school, and that would already amount to something like 23 billion. But if we will be utilizing the existing schools that we have, then that would greatly be reduced to about 80%, because we have already several classrooms and offices which we can utilize. So In other words, since General Rodilis is starting from a serious class assumption, then we will have that kind of a maximum budget. But in terms also of utilizing all the facilities that we have, then that would be very much lower. For example, if we would be pursuing a 2-year pilot implementation phase, DepEd will only require something like about 50 to 60 million every year for the pilot implementation phase. But for a full implementation for the next, on the 3rd and several years, Mr. Senator, we're still doing all the math for that. No. But initially, for the pilot phase, excluding the expenses for the instruction academy or the ROTC instructional course academy, then more or less it's about 60 million per year is necessary. That is utilizing already the existing facilities that we have.
But you said what is envisioned here is a nationwide rollout of mandatory ROTC in grades 11 and 12. And I understand that there is now a pilot program, but we want to also forecast a nationwide rollout. That's why we need to understand how much do we need, no? If you're saying 23 billion, then that will raise a lot of eyebrows, no? And definitely this might be shut down because ang unang tanong, can we afford 23 billion for this program, no? So that's why we need to really break down, including the budgetary requirements for this program. And I know you are in the process of doing that, but we'd like to get that breakdown, or at least estimate lang po, no? Hingin rin yan during the budget season, eh. So we need at least the estimate, so that when we sponsor the bill and this question will crop up, then we will have some form of breakdown to enlighten the other legislators, no?
Mr. Chairman, just in
yes.
addition, siguro USEC include na rin yung personnel requirement because there are 11,000 schools, so there will be 11,000 commandants, there will be 11,000 assistant commandants, there will be at least 1 or 2 tactical officer times 11,000, so we estimate you need about 35 to 40,000 new personnel. So how much will that cost? Maybe that should be included in the budget.
Just following
In the budget estimate, rather.
Following what Mr. Guido mentioned earlier, I noticed from the presentation, both DepEd and DND will create new positions, no? And would like to also understand what are those new positions. Of course, the salary packages that correspond to those new positions and the total, no? Because aside from the logistical, the 23 billion, assuming nga, no, 23 is the logistical, we also have to compute how much are the new positions to be created in the future, as what Mr. Guido mentioned, because those things should be computed as early as now, no? These are very elementary questions that we need to answer.
If I may answer.
Yeah, yes, General.
It must be noted, sir, that those are figures already. Those are just figures for the facilities in the senior high school. It does not necessarily include the cost that we need to, for example, replicate the training facilities that is now currently in place at the Army Reserve Command, sir. I think you're aware of that and have seen that, sir. And we would want to replicate that also in other areas or in other regions, so that there is a facility that our ROTC cadets can go to be able to experience firsthand the military training outside of the schools. These are times that cadets will be going out of the campus to go to a military camp. So even those facilities, like what in the Army Reserve Command, we also need to replicate that, and we will propose that, sir, in the budget also, sir. Later on, sir.
Yeah. General, if I may suggest to DepEd and DND, if the amount will be too big, no, to allocate in a short period of time, then you might want to consider maybe a slow rollout of the program, no? I think right now we have 100 schools being or 100 schools identified to to be the pioneer schools. But later on, baka in the IRR, we can do a 5-year rollout, no? If the budget will not, if the budget will be a constraint. So,
Yes, sir. We agree with that, sir. In fact, one of the things that we're looking at, in case, for example, the bill gets passed into law, is that we need to start with a this pilot program, because this is the one way for us to, number one, to vet the curriculum. Number two, to look at all the budgetary requirements, the actual requirements that are needed for the program, so that we'll be ready in case we start to roll out or for the full implementation. And we agree with you, sir. We can do a phased or scaled rollout throughout a certain period, sir. We will plan for that too, sir.
thank you, General. We'll request for a preliminary estimate from DepEd and DND. Again, this is in line with the possible questions when we sponsor the bill. The next, and this is actually a very unique feature, no, that was presented earlier, the Grievance Committee. I think the Grievance Committee is the mechanism to prevent hazing, abuses, and corruption on the ground, no? Again, if you're talking about 11,000 schools, then we have 11,000 possibilities of corruption and abuses. And if you're talking about 2 million students, more or less, no, Yusek, then we're, again, 2 million possibilities for abuse and corruption. So we need to have that mechanism very clear from the onset that there's a prevention process and there's also a investigative process as well as a process to sanction those who violate our laws. And what I see earlier is the Grievance Committee will be the mechanism to do that. My question, General, the Grievance Committee, in a nutshell po, paano po, can you walk us through how the Grievance Committee will function on the ground, no? Assuming there's a case of abuse, no? Paano po magfa-function tong Grievance Committee so that the person responsible for that abuse will be dealt with swiftly, no? Not in many years, but swiftly ho, mapaparusahan ho siya.
Yes, sir. If I may just walk through you, sir, to the... So in the draft guidelines that we have formulated, sir, the procedures includes no, for example, a complaint has to be submitted in writing. Okay. So under oath and signed by the complainant or the aggrieved party and filed before the Grievance Committee. The complainant may be either the aggrieved party, the parents, or the guardians. Okay. So upon receiving the complaint, the committee shall immediately convene and evaluate the same to determine sufficiency. Okay. Next, if there's a sufficiency that exists, the board shall require the respondents to submit within a reasonable amount of time an answer or counter affidavit, usually 15 days from the notice. So if it is insufficient, of course, the board will recommend in writing for the dismissal without prejudice to refiling upon submission of competent proof to support the same. Upon filing the complaint, the complainant shall serve the respondents with copies thereof within 7 days. After meeting all parts of evidence and testimonies, the committee will meet to review, discuss, and make appropriate recommendations. If the complaint is anonymous, the same will be evaluated, okay, so as to determine whether there is sufficient ground to warrant the convening of the committee. This is common, okay? Some probably will not want to be initially identified, So anonymous complaints will not be scrapped or put aside immediately. They will still be evaluated, sir. Okay. Then all decision, then recommendations will be made by the grievance committee, and it will be referred to the appropriate agencies that has jurisdiction over the acts of the person involved. So if it's the AFP, it will be transmitted to our Provost Marshal General. If it's with the DepEd side, they will be covered by DepEd, the DepEd Order number 49. So in a nutshell, sir, that's how the committee will work, sir.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick query. Maybe so that we will also be apprised, we'd like probably the AFP, DND should also explain what special competencies the grievance committee members should have. Because remember, in their proposal, they are teaching children, minors. So special sensitiveness to sensitivities that relate to children, special sensitiveness that relate to child protection, special sensitiveness or competency that relate to gender sensitivity. I think especially because these are children, there should be special competencies as approved by certain bodies that the members of the grievance committee do have those competencies to actually address and answer the grievances. Otherwise, if we get ordinary civil servants to sit there without special training, I think that would be violating the rights of children. So I think that should be one of the things that they should be putting in. Not that we necessarily agree with that, but I think if we have to put that in as a grievance committee, special competencies have to be put in, because remember, these are children. So I would like to suggest that such details should be part of the, I don't know, the bill or the implementing rules and regulations.
Actually, that leads to my question, General. What is the composition of the grievance committee?
Sir, I was about to say, tell you about the composition. Okay. The committee shall be composed of 3 members, namely, in this case it was called ACTPs. The ACTP coordinator, who shall serve as the chairman of the committee, and 2 other members, which will include the commandant or even the assistant commandant, the AFP, and the school's guidance counselor. So when we talk about competencies and the who are cognizant of the sensitivities of the rights of these children, okay, we can really see that the commandant is just one of the 3 main members of the committee, sir. Okay.
And then, General, number
yes,
1 is...
Number 1, sir, is the ACTP coordinator, which is from the DepEd side, sir. Well, we call it ACTP because these are guidelines for the ACTP. But of course, we can apply this to the ROTC if it becomes a law.
The ACTP...
We're talking about this guidelines, sir.
The ACTP coordinator is...
will be the ROTC coordinator if it is. Yes,
that's
sir.
a DepEd personnel.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and most likely, who will this be on the DepEd roster? Is it the principal? Is it the...
Most probably, sir, it will be the head teacher who will be handling the ROTC program.
So the head teacher will
Yes,
be
sir.
the chairman, and then next will be the guidance counselor and a commandant. Okay.
Mr. Chair, just to elaborate further, the Joint Grievance Committee is the one acting like an oversight function in the school in the implementation of the ROTC program. So it will be headed by the ACTP or ROTC school coordinator, which is coming from DepEd, and then there are 2 members, the guidance counselor, again from DepEd, and the ROTC commandant. This will be the joint committee, and then their function will be basically a fact-finding investigation whenever there are issues or complaints. And if the issue, for example, and the complaint involves DepEd personnel, then the recommendation of the joint committee will be recommended to the DepEd grievance committee. We have our own grievance committee. We have a child protection committee where we can implement that complaint. And then if it is the personnel involved is AFP, then they will be recommended to the provost marshal of the AFP, because both agencies have different sets of rules. No? The DND and then the AFP will have their own articles of war, while the DepEd have its own process on the complaint. So So separately, they will function in different mechanisms, but there is a joint committee on the ground on the school level.
So, Mr. Chair, according to Mr. Pasqua, Yusek Pasqua, so I think the implementing rules or part of the law should be clear as to who will decide whose fault it is, because it's in the same committee. You say, no, it's the fault of the AFP, no, it's the fault of DepEd, no, it's the fault of... How is the decision-making process? That's my number one question. My second question is, do we have, and I think we have civil service here, do we have in the plantilla position of DepEd now or the AFP competencies that are related to child protection and gender sensitivity in the civil service positions for teachers and head teachers? Because I think that should also be clear that we cannot just put any Tom, Dick, and Harry into this grievance committee or into this ACPT or whatever you call it, who are not qualified to handle sensitive issues with children. So I think, I don't know if there are already existing plantilla positions for head teachers, for example, that require training in these areas and are already existing in the civil service or in DepEd. So those are just my 2 points, Mr. Chair.
Attorney.
On the part of the Commission, we would like to remind the DepEd and the DND to be mindful of Section 31 of the ORA, which is the Omnibus Rules on Appointments and other HR actions. If we will be creating, I am given the impression that we are creating positions. So whether it be casual, regular, or contractual positions, there should be qualification standards proposed by both parties who will craft the positions, and those qualification standards should be submitted to the Commission for our approval. So for the qualification standards, you may craft it with your recommendation, sir, to include, with the competencies, to include the competencies on the child protection or any other specialized training that these instructors or other personnel may have.
Thank you. Thank you, Attorney.
So, so you're saying that there are no special competencies right now embedded in the plantilla position?
Sir, under the existing qualification standards, there are none, because this is a specialized program, if I may. So if it's a specialized program, then they should include other competencies that may be relevant.
I was going to tell you to address the chair before you ask questions.
My apologies, Mr. Chair.
Before we continue, General, I know for a fact that guidance counselors are scarce in our schools, and this will be another sticking point when we discuss the grievance committee. I know for a fact that it's been a challenge for DepEd to complete the number of guidance counselors in all of our schools. I will not tackle that here in this hearing, but please take note of that, because if you are saying that guidance counselor is a must in the grievance committees and kulang tayo sa guidance counselors, then the mechanism for preventing abuse, investigating abuse will now break down kasi wala yung isang essential component. So we really need to study carefully the composition of that grievance committee. Taking note, what Mr. Guido said earlier was quite valid, yung competencies rin. I'm confident that the guidance counselors can do their job. These are competent people, but kung kulang naman, then we will have a problem. So how do we address this issue? Because this will definitely crop up when we talk about this on the floor.
Mr. Chair, when it comes to the guidance counseling issue, we already have a pending communication with the Department of Budget and Management on the items on the guidance counselor. We have proposals already there, and it's already being considered. So anyway, that's another matter. But if the oversight grievance committee or the joint grievance committee will really mandate a guidance counselor there, or in his or her stead, a appropriate representative can be appointed there, and we need to, that's right, we need to designate the competent personnel who should sit on that joint grievance committee on the school level. In the case of the Child Protection Committee of the DepEd, we have several DepEd orders already outlining the memberships of our committee, including also their qualifications and the process that they are undertaking whenever there's complaint on issues against the school or the students or the teachers, etc. You already have that, Mr. Chair.
Mr.
Thank
Chair,
you,
if I
Mr.
may just add, Mr. Chair. So if we talk about actual number of guidance counselors DepEd has, Mr. Chair, so we have a total of item guidance counselor 1, 1,247, guidance counselor 2, 3,436, guidance counselor 3, 724, guidance services specialist 1, 3. More or less, Mr. Chair, I need to double check kasi po pag sinabi pong guidance counselor, yung qualification standards po niyan medyo mataas, Mr. Chair. But we also have items like guidance coordinators 1 to 3, but that's very negligible. Wala pa pong 300 po ito. So humigit kumulong, Mr. Chair, 5,000 personnel po lamang tayo. Pero hindi natin pa alam, we cannot disaggregate this kasi may mababang paaralan po tayo lamang 38,064. So we don't know yet how many of this ay nasa elementary at ilan po yung nandoon sa junior and senior high school or senior high school po lamang. So we could disaggregate for you, Mr. Chair, if the Chair wishes.
Yusek, moving forward, no, and on a later date, I would like to request from DepEd and DND, since, again, the grievance committee is such an essential part of this proposal in order to prevent abuses, then we need to make sure that we have the necessary personnel to fill all of those 11,000 grievance committees. No? We need to make sure that we have the guidance counselors, the head teacher. I think the head teacher nandoon yan, ano? But the guidance counselor is really very important. No? So we need to understand where we are. Again, if we cannot fulfill it in 1 year, baka we have a rollout plan that will, in the next 5 years, so we can fulfill all the guidance counselor, or we can fill all the guidance counselor position in the grievance committees. No? We need to assure the public that we have the manpower and the competencies. No? Sabi nga ni Mr. Guido, incompetency to make sure that the grievance committee is functioning properly. Ayaw naman natin maglagay kahit sino-sino dyan for the sake of a grievance committee. We need to know that we have the necessary competencies in order to launch an investigation, as well as sanction those who are who abused their authority. With that, General, I just want to be clarified. No, the grievance committee is limited to investigation and recommendation. No? And then, kung DepEd siya, the DepEd will sanction that person. If AFP will sanction that person.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. General, how about prevention? Who will be in charge of prevention? Because prevention is equally as important to prevent all of these things from happening. Who will be in charge of prevention?
Well, basically, sir, as we stipulated in our guidelines, in our letter directive, all the members, including the commandant and staff of the ROTC units that will be created, they're the ones primarily responsible to prevent this, issue strict guidelines on the conduct of the program to prevent this, make sure that these guidelines are well cascaded, make sure that they are every officer in particular who will be handling the program, where they are cadet officers or the training staff, they are very, very much cognizant and conversant with this these guidelines. So it starts from there. It does not doesn't have to be the grievance committee to be who will be responsible. So all our personnel, whether from DepEd or from the DND AFP, are responsible for preventing this.
Thank you. Ms. Asek.
May I manifest also that the DND AFP will be compliant to what the President has emphatically announced, that the program should be free from hazing and abuse. And then, of course, sir, it will be gender sensitive also. And the selection process will be very, very stringent on the personnel that will be tasked to implement the program. Thank you, sir.
I suggest ASEC and General, we include that in the bill. No? We want to project to the public that the bill incorporated prevention. We also incorporated mechanisms to prevent abuse and also to sanction abuse. In the DND proposal, which is, I think this is what Congress approved, there's actually mention of all of this but not explicit. No? So I would suggest to make it explicit so that, again, it telegraphs to the public that this bill is putting a lot of emphasis on prevention and also on punishing those who err or those who abuse their authority.
Yes, Your Honor, we will ensure that it's included not only in the bill but also in the implementing rules.
Right,
that
right. The implementing rules, pwede na natin lagyan in detalye. But in general framework, for example, ang iniisip ko lang creation of a grievance committee, nandun na siya.
Yes, sure.
So that, but the, you know, the time frames, how it launched a investigation, we'll leave it to the IRR. No, yeah.
We'll include this.
Yeah. General, are you done with your presentation dun sa grievance?
Yes, sir. Unless there are other clarifications, sir.
Another, General, yung I'll move to another another issue, the possible violation of treaties and protocols. We requested Attorney Daanoy to or si ASEC to enlighten us on that issue, whether this will violate any of the treaties or protocols that us, the senators, enter into in the past. We want to be absolutely sure that there is no inconsistency with any of those international protocols.
Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you, Your Honor. If I
Before we
may,
proceed,
I think on the same topic.
yeah, on the same topic on grievance, Mr. Chair. We are also proposing for the inclusion in the bill for a Congressional Oversight Commission, to which the Joint Interagency Management Committee would be reporting annually during the pilot phase and maybe every 2 years thereafter. It's another form of, it's another level of monitoring on the implementation of the program and also to avoid complaints, abuses, etc.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Yusek. Again, what we're trying to achieve here is to telegraph to the public that this bill is absolutely airtight when it comes to safeguards and prevention. The fear really is stemming from the past abuses that happened, and that's why we need to make sure that the safeguards are already built in the law. No, hindi lang sa IRR kasi IRR can change. No, but there are some concepts that we need to make sure that it's built in the law. No, all right. ASEC.
thank you, Your Honor. May I manifest the Department's position on the issues that was raised in a letter dated March 6, 2009, addressed to the Honorable Chairperson, Committee on Education, Arts and Culture, Senator Francis Escudero, sent by the Secretary of National Defense. May I briefly highlight the contents of the letter? Your Honor, it is the position of the Department that the proposed House Bill, or the DND version of the ROTC Bill, does not contravene with Republic Act number 7610 and the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child and the optional proposals thereto. Upon consolidation and application of the domestic laws and the UN Convention provisions, the following prohibitions must be observed by state parties. Number 1, children shall not be recruited to become members of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, meaning those that are aged below 18 years. Persons below 15 years should not take a direct part in hostilities. States should refrain from recruiting any person below 15 years into their armed forces. In the case of recruitment, and had attained 15 years but below 18 years, priority should be given to the oldest. Number 4, states shall ensure that members of the armed forces below 18 years should not take a direct part in hostilities. And number 5, states shall not compulsorily recruit into their armed forces persons below 18 years. Of the 5 stated provisions provided in Republic Act 7610 and the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and the optional protocols, none of which can be found are in conflict with the proposed DND version of the bill. It is unmistakable that children are not to be recruited to become members of the armed forces of the Philippines, and the proposed bill does not provide of children participation in any hostilities, and no compulsory recruitment of persons below 18 years are to be made in the armed forces. Succinctly put, the DND version docketed as House Bill number 5113 does not and shall never contravene the aforesaid domestic law on special protection of children and international conventions on the right of the child. That, in brief, Your Honor, is the contents of the letter that I referred to.
I read the position paper of the UP Vanguard, and they actually included a matrix of the grades, senior high school, and then the corresponding age. In this matrix, pag grade 11, the corresponding age ng bata is about 16 years old, and pag grade 12 is about 17 years old. No? So I just want to be enlightened, Asek. In this case, we're training minors, and what the protocol calls for is not to compulsorily recruit minors to the armed forces. Aren't we recruiting minors but making it compulsory in the senior high school?
No, Your Honor, because it is emphatically stated, as also in the briefing of General Rodil, that enlistment shall be made upon reaching the age of 18.
So in this case, since senior high school, based on this matrix, after when you graduate senior high school, you're only 17. So you cannot be part of the AFP.
Yes, Your Honor.
But you are trained among many things, in military training. But I saw the components, marami siya, But you're trained in military training.
Partly, Your Honor. And
So,
the other components of the training is on civic, on nationhood and nationalism.
In that training, in military knowledge or training, does not contravene to the protocol and to the treaties that we signed.
Mr. Chair, what is specifically provided by law, the prohibition is, it is prohibited to recruit to become members of the armed forces of the Philippines. We are not recruiting. This is the wordings of the law. To recruit to become members of the armed forces of the Philippines. Maliwanag sa batas yan eh. So, we are not recruiting to become members of the armed forces of the Philippines.
But to train in military knowledge, is that consistent with, or is that inconsistent with the treaties and the optional protocol?
Mr. Chair, what is provided in the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, this is the provision. State parties shall take feasible measures to ensure that persons who have not attained the age of 15 years do not take indirect part in hostilities. Itong wordings eh. Do not take a direct part in hostilities. It's not. This is part of their curriculum in the high school. This is a citizen training eh. So they're not malayo, very far from the application of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. It's not really applicable, Mr. Chair. As a matter of fact, Mr. Chair, kung tutuusin mo the UN Convention, even allows it, 15 to 18, provided they should not take part in hostilities. That is the UN Convention. Even in-allow niya eh. Basta hindi lang mag-take part sa hostilities.
So pag below 18 ka, and you, for example, you graduated 17, you have to wait before you can join voluntarily. No? It's
Yes.
not even compulsory enlisting, but a voluntary enlisting.
Yes, Your Honor. You have to wait until you reach the age of 18.
But when you reach the age of 18, is it compulsory that you are enlisted? Or is it voluntarily?
Yes, as you are compulsorily enlisted into the reserve force, Your Honor.
Into the reserve force. So
Yes, Your Honor.
automatic ka na, you become a
Automatic
reserve
po.
force. So you're part of the armed forces.
Yes, as part of the Armed Forces Reserve, Your Honor.
And that 2-year basic training is enough for you to be a qualified member of the reservist.
Yes, in accordance with the existing policies, Your Honor, and if you wish to go on an advanced training, you undertake the advanced ROTC course
So
further
pwede
in
na yun.
college.
Okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
Right. Attorney?
Mr. Chair.
I know meron kang rebuttal, no? So
Well, actually, Mr. Chair, there were two things that were mentioned here that I think the committee and everyone here present must take very careful note of. Number one, it says that the solution to the perceived problem is to defer inclusion into the reserve force until they reach 18. Okay, but they are compulsorily covered the moment they step into grades 11 and 12. Compulsory. I don't know where Attorney Daanoy considers that as not conscription, but it is actually mandatory. You have no choice. In fact, it's a condition for graduation for grades 11 and 12. If you don't take it, you don't graduate. It's as simple as that. So it's actually mandatory. So you have no choice in the matter. No? So at 16, you are already being directed to do that. Now, the UN declaration that they cite actually constantly avoids mentioning what this Senate and through this government submitted to the United Nations when they actually ratified the optional convention. I think you need to answer this very categorically. Number one, this is in declaration, no? The minimum age for voluntary recruitment, and this is not even voluntary, it's mandatory, so you have no choice, into the Armed Forces of the Philippines, which is a no-brainer because you're going to get into the Armed Forces of the Philippines Reserve, which is dictated by the Constitution itself, is 18 years, except, according to the Philippines, for training purposes, where the duration shall have the student, cadet, trainee attain the majority age at the completion date. Not when you are incorporated into the reserve, but when you complete your training. And that is why there is going to be a clear violation here if you actually insist on grades 11 and 12. Because ang tawag po dun sa dinidelay mo kunwari, circumvention of the law, yun po ang tawag namin dun eh. Why I have no problem with ROTC, I fully support it 1,000%. I am fully behind the DND on the matter. I find it very difficult to accept this kind of proposition where the Senate is being asked to circumvent the law. The UN declaration forms part of the law of the land. And we cannot just trifle with the international community because now, because of grades 11 and 12, they will hit college at 17, chances are. And by the time they finish their training, they would be 19. So whether this is military, compulsory, voluntary, recruitment, armed forces, reserve, it doesn't matter because we do not violate the UN Convention if that is the case. But if you bring it down to grades 11 and 12, then you really have a problem. And the problem is clear. You look at when the trainee, student, or cadet attains majority age on completion date. And on completion date, the matrix will clearly show that they will only be 17 when they complete the course. I think that's the problem. That's really the problem that we see
we have no problem with the DND on anything else, except that if we do not recognize that and we pretend that there's no violation by simply not integrating them into the reserve until they are 18, we're basically saying, let's circumvent the law by not following completion date. Let's pretend that the completion date is when they're already 18. So that's even variable. Depende kung kailan ang birthday ng bata. And yet they are, as mentioned just a while ago, compulsorily going to be part of the reserve anyway. Diba? So it's not even your option. So yung sinasabi kanina na voluntary recruitment, hindi rin naman totoo yun. Alam nga naman, yung voluntary, hindi pwede yung 18, pero pag ginawa mong mandatory, pwede na. I mean, that doesn't make sense, right? Bawal yung voluntary na yung bata mismo nag-consent, pero pwede mo siyang pilitin by law. Hindi naman siguro tama yun. I don't think that was the intention of the protocol, nor was that the intention of the Senate when it approved for ratification the optional protocol on the involvement of minors in armed conflict.
Attorney, I think I'm reading the protocol, no, the declaration that we entered into. I want to, going by the arguments of the DND, there's a distinction between recruitment into the armed forces and the training. No? So this declaration focuses on the recruitment, while the proposal of the DND is merely on training. No? Although there are military components in the training, but it's purely training the student on many matters. No? So there seems to be, from my understanding, a disjoint between this declaration and also the intention of the DND.
Mr. Senator, hindi naman po kasi tignan niyo po, ang sabi po dito, except, never mind po yung minimum age for voluntary recruitment, ano? Kasi dito, wala na nga choice yung bata eh. Hindi na siya nire-recruit eh. Sinabi na lang na estado sa kanya, wala kang choice boy. Kailangan kang mag-ROTC rito, ha? No, yes or no, walang pakialam ang magulang mo dito. Gagawin mo ito para sa estado. Okay, so no choice ako. So, whether it's voluntary recruitment or training, it doesn't really matter. I'm requiring you. Ang sabi naman dito, except for training purposes. So, miski na for training, hindi pa rin pwede. Kasi, ang sabi nga po dito, except for training purposes, whose duration, and in this case, the proposal is for 2 years, grades 11 and 12, shall have the student cadet trainee attain the majority age, which is 18, on completion date.
Attorney, what you're saying is, in order to satisfy that exception, dapat pag-graduate ng bata, 18 na siya?
Yes, sir.
That's what you are saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That is what the government's declaration and commitment to the United Nations says, literally. I'm not interpreting, sir. Kasi na-suggest noon dati na ini-interpret ko eh. I'm not interpreting, I'm just reading, sir. Oh. I mean, no, you don't have to be a lawyer in this room to realize that if you read it plain language, it really says at the completion date. So, kailan ba po na-complete yung training na naging exception?
I think we should establish first, Yusek Kumali, ang grades 11 is 16, ang grades 12 is 17. Is that the mean average, or the mean age of the students in those grades?
The answer is yes, Mr. Chair. Meaning, yes means, Mr. Chair, ang batas po kasi, yung K-12 law, sinabi po na ang kindergarten po natin dapat 5 years of age. Entry level sa first grade is 6 years of age. Pag tinuloy-tuloy mo yan, Mr. Chair, pinapaliwanag ko lang po kung ano po yung ibig ko sabihin ng yes, Mr. Chair. Ang grade 12 po, logically, dapat 17 po siya nang pumasok. At pwede po siyang maging 18, pagdating po ng graduation niya, dadalang graduation po namin ay kalimita ay Abril, Mr. Chair, unang linggo ng Abril o huling linggo po ng Marso, pwede po siyang maging 18 pagka-graduate niya. I'm not talking about the training, Mr. Chair, yung graduation po ng grade 12. Kung siya po'y pinanganak between January 1st to first week of April, pagka-graduate, if you may, Mr. Chair. But of course, if the student was born in the month of June, talaga nga pong 17 pa lamang po siya. Mayo, if the Mr. Chair knows what this representation is trying to point out. So, ang posibilidad lang, Mr. Chair, na maging 18 po siya ay kung nagsimula po siya ng kinder ng overage, pero kung pumasok po siya ng tama, ang posibilidad lang po nag-graduate siya ng grade 12 na 18 anyos, Mr. Chair, ay kung pinanganak po siya from January to April, Mr. Chair. Otherwise, wala pa po 18 yung bata.
Mr. Chair, I think the logic that the AFP DND is proposing can be clearer understood if we put it in this context. At the risk of sounding facetious, we could actually do the military training when the kids are 10 to 12 years old. And then just tell the parents, we won't recruit you as member of the AFP Reserve unless you're 18 years old. So that's a very dangerous slope that we are trying to circumvent the law. Because you could actually say, train the kids how to, military or whatever you call it, 10 to 12 years old, but do not recruit them unless they're 18. So that's the same logic that they're saying that, okay, you're 17 years old, we cannot recruit you, we'll wait until you're 18. So what's the difference by now saying, I will train you how to bomb, how to kill, I don't know, from you're 10 to 12 years old, but I promise, dear parents, I won't make them members of the AFP unless they're 18 years old. That is why that logic is really, you're really going down a very, very dangerous slope, Mr. Chair.
Well, Mr. Guido, that logic will only happen if the congressmen and the legislators are illogical. No, but I don't think we will allow that to happen. No? That's why you need an enabling law to facilitate this proposal. So, but Attorney Daanoy, any comments po regarding that exception? No?
Mr. Chair, the Philippine Constitution is very clear. It is the prime duty of the government is to serve and protect the people. The government may call upon the people to defend the state, and in the fulfillment thereof, all citizens may be required under conditions provided by law to render personal, military, or civil service. This is the mandate of the Constitution. That treaty cannot be more than the Philippine Constitution. Even that UN Convention cannot be more than the Constitution. Even our basic law cannot be more than the Constitution. I think we should follow that. Training is different from service. We train children not to become members of the armed forces. We train them not to be in the service of the armed forces. But it's different in pursuance of the Constitution. Ibang pagkaintindi natin, we are not recruiting them. Huwag natin baliktadin ang batas. Ang batas sa child protection law is very clear. Okay. It is prohibited to recruit to serve the armed forces. We are not doing that. Even the UN Convention allows 15 to 18 provided it should not take part in the direct hostilities. Ina-allow even the UN Convention Mahirap yung Mr. Chair, binabaliktad natin ng batas to, maliwanag naman that this proposed bill, we are not recruiting to become members of the armed forces or to take part in direct hostilities. Wala, malayo Huwag natin paikutin no? And that convention, even that UN convention, should not be more than the Constitution. The Constitution is the supreme law that all laws should be bow to the supremacy of our Constitution. Kahit yung mga UN convention na yan, hindi pwede magsubra sa Constitution natin Maliwanag It is the prime duty of every citizen to render personal, military and civil service. That is the mandate of the Constitution. Wag na natin paikot-ikutin pa. Ang ibig sabihin pala, itong mga previous natin na ginawa pala, violation ng UN Convention yan. Mga PMA training natin, violation ng UN Convention yan. If we have to accept that line of argument.
Mr. Chair.
Oh.
Attorney, before I understand your logic, no? But I'd like to understand itong sa declaration, no? Because again, this optional protocol was ratified by the Senate itself, no? And we will now be sponsoring a bill that might contravene to this exact treaty or exact protocol that we ratified, no? So I want to be enlightened, no? Because I'm reading this declaration, and the exception here is what was mentioned earlier, except for training purposes, whose duration and goes on until majority age, no? So how do you reconcile this exception and also, again, the proposal of reinstating mandatory ROTC in our senior high schools, no? How do you reconcile? Help us or enlighten us so that we understand there's no inconsistency between this one and the proposed reinstatement of ROTC. No?
Mr. Chair, we will cite the history, why this UN Convention was passed. Because there are countries recruiting child soldiers, like in Sierra Leone. That's why lumabas ang convention na yan, because they're recruiting child soldiers. Bata pa, 9 years old, 10 years old, pinapahawakan na ng AK-47. But in the Philippines, it's different. We're not doing this. Oh. Now, Mr. Chair, we do not want to be belabor on this, to debate on this, no. But it's a matter of understanding what really wants the convention, wants us to follow. Huwag tayong mag-recruit for our armed forces. Yung age limit na yan, hindi pwede. But even if you read the convention, inaalaw nga basta hindi lang mag-direct sa hostilities. Pabalik-balik lang itong argument, Mr. Chair. So, as to whether or not yung proposed bill natin is in contravention with this UN Convention, the answer of the Defense Department is very clear. It's not. It is not. Unless you interpret it in different way, yun ang mahirap. No? We have to determine what is really the intention of this UN Convention. We should avoid recruiting child soldiers for our armed forces. Yan ang history niyan, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. General, yes.
So may I say something from a non-lawyer's layman's point of view. In the US, sir, they not only have an ROTC program conducted by the U.S. Army Cadet Command under the Training and Doctrines Command of the U.S. Army, but they also have in all the major services a junior ROTC program. These are cadets that are definitely below 18, as young as probably 15, 14, okay? And one of the main contentions why some schools have this program is because they also want to inculcate the values that the military training can infuse in young people, okay? Not only for them to become military personnel later on, but to be ready in case of any circumstance that may happen. I'm reading this article about a junior ROTC cadet. He's just 17. So he said that when he saw a drug overdose victim, he knew that he needed to do something. And at that point, he was able, applying the skills and competencies that he had been trained to, on this particular circumstance. And he was very well cited. And I think the main contention why we want our so-called minors, if you may want to call that, okay, because they are, you consider them under 18, to be trained, okay, is that we want them to be ready in any circumstance, okay. We cannot dictate when the next war should happen. We cannot tell them, we'll wait for all our reservists to be 18. Okay? We need to train everybody, even for service just in their community, inculcating that at a very early age and capturing, as we always mention, the 70%, the 70 to 80% that do not go to college. I think it's a logical action or a logical option of government to be able to prepare its citizens even at this age. And to me, from a layman's point of view, okay, training them and preparing them really goes beyond all these statutes and legal arguments. Just my point of view, sir. That's a personal point of view, sir.
Thank you, General. Attorney Reyes, any...
I just wish to put matters into perspective, no? Kasi in the very same constitution which Attorney Daanoy says is the highest law of the land, we agreed as a constitutional provision to respect our treaty obligations. So when we accept a treaty obligation and we tell the international community that we are bound by it, in the exercise of our sovereign right as an independent nation, we agreed to limit that sovereignty to what the international community believes to be conventional wisdom. In this particular case, I am in full agreement with Attorney Daanoy that maybe the moving spirit behind the optional protocol was the recruitment and involvement of minors in armed conflict. And for this reason, there was that consensus among nations, including the Philippines, that said, we will not recruit minors. In fact, some states no longer recruit at all. Membership in the armed forces is purely voluntary, whether you call it in the reserve or in the regular force. In the Philippines, we have a mix. We want to adopt a mix where the reserve will be compulsory because our Constitution says that. That's why our legal memorandum, which we submitted to the committee, actually makes out that what the Constitution really intended when it said compulsory civil or military training is actually military, because it always goes back to the obligation of the state to defend and the duty of every Filipino to participate in that defense. Now, does that mean that if we exclude minors, we're saying that minors shouldn't be don't have that duty? Well, kung voluntary yan, kung nagkaroon tayo ng giyera dyan, hindi mo naman pwedeng sabihin doon sa bata, huwag ka sumali, wala ka pang 18 eh. Hindi ba? But what we're saying here is that we're not giving them any choice. We're not giving them any choice. We're passing a law that's making it mandatory. And we're not actually trying to change the... We're not interpreting, ano? Kasi my good friend, Attorney Daanoy, reads from the optional protocol on the Convention on the Rights of Children on the involvement of children in armed conflict. Yes, that is correct. And it does say here also that state parties shall ensure that, this is Article 2, ensure that persons who have not attained the age of 18 years old are not compulsorily recruited into the armed forces. Okay? It does say that in Article 2. Okay? Compulsorily recruited. Now, the law that we are passing, we have to call it call a spade a spade. The law that we are considering here compulsorily recruits whoever is covered by that law into the armed forces reserve, because that's what the Constitution says. The Constitution defines the armed forces as being composed of the reserve and a standing army. And that's the entire armed forces of the Philippines. That's by the Constitution as well. And that's why when it says compulsory training, duty of the state to defend its citizen, rather the obligation of the state to defend its citizen, and the duty of the citizen to discharge that duty for the state, it is actually referring to military training. That's why in the House, when there was a hearing on this, we were squirming all over the place trying to justify that the grade 11 and 12 is not military training. If it is in fact not military training, then it is useless to to the defense of the state. It is useless to the reserve force. So obviously, that's not the intention. In fact, it would have been useless to the DND because they will never go into the reserve force. So for it to be valid and for it to actually satisfy the requirement of the Constitution, it has to be military. Because the duty is the military part eh. Diba? Ang ginawa lang natin dito sa Senado, meron tayong proposal na pinalawak yung duty ng citizen. Hindi lang sa territorial defense, sinama na rin natin ang disaster at saka ang peace and order doon sa ating isang kinoconsider na proposition dito, which also takes into account the training of high school people, but not as part of the reserve. When they undergo preparatory citizen service training in grades 11 and 12, they are training not with the end in view of joining the reserve force. That is pure preparatory citizenship training alone. Andyan lahat ng gusto na sinasabi ng DND ngayon, and I'm sure that DepEd is already doing that right now. Even without this law, they have citizenship training already, and they're doing a good job. So basically, we're just injecting a military component to it, pero hindi sila ever. Walang delay. They are not intended to join the armed forces pagka grades 11 and 12. Kaya wala tayong violation. Those children, despite all of the sensitivities, I think the DepEd also pointed that out, there are some difficulties in training at that level eh. Kasi meron kang Child Protection Act, meron kang Anti-Bullying Act. Maraming batas dyan eh, no, na hindi mo pwedeng sigawan, hindi mo pwedeng ganituhin, which makes military training extremely difficult at best in grades 11 and 12 without violating all of those laws. Kaya ang sa amin lang naman sinasabi, we can solve all that by simply going at this at the tertiary level. When they enter college at 17, they will definitely finish the training when they are 19. So ibig sabihin, miski ano pang sabihin ng ibang bansa, hindi nila tayo pwedeng sabihin nag-violate kayo ng protocol nyo eh. Yung pong binasa ko po kanina kasi is literally by the letter is not in the protocol itself. That is by a self-imposed declaration by the Republic of the Philippines in the document of accession to the treaty which it filed with the United Nations. Ito po yung Senate yung pong declaration ano. This is on file with the UN. In fact, if you go there, you will see it. You don't have to you will see this very declaration. So far, I haven't heard anybody say that we're not going to violate this because there's no way we're not going to violate this. Ang sabi kasi talaga, ang linaw, shall have the student cadet trainee attain the majority age at the completion date. No other date is material under this convention but the completion date itself. So I was just hoping that we can play around with the words. We can rationalize that this is not a circumvention of the law. No, but at the end of the day, I think it will be. And if the Senate put the stamp of approval on it, it will probably go. It's probably going to be challenged anyway, somewhere.
Attorney, I'm just trying to think out loud. What if the military component in the training is a minor component that does not lead to, let's say, an automatic enlistment? No? Because I think the point of contention here is the automatic enlistment, correct?
Partly, sir. In part.
What if the program, this ROTC program or a program that will not lead to an automatic enlistment? It's just a training, a training of different skills, of which a small part will be military.
So it is not directed at solving the reserve component required by the Constitution?
Correct. It's not a a direct solution to the reserve requirements of the military.
Well, there might
I'm just
be,
thinking out loud,
Yes, sir.
Attorney.
well, there might be no violation if they, kasi po sinabi ko po sa inyo kanina ho, yung Senate bill po na sinusuportahan po namin, in fact, meron din pong preparatory phase. But because they are, there is grades 11 and 12, the preparatory citizen service training program is actually in grades 11 and 12 as well.
Attorney, parang CAT.
Yes, sir.
Di ba, nung CAT high school,
Yes, sir.
Hindi naman automatic,
Hindi po sa
enlisted ka eh.
hindi lang po hindi automatic, hindi ka talaga mai-enlist.
Correct. Hindi
You
ka
are
ma-enlist.
not being
Correct.
trained.
What if we bring back that concept so that we don't violate any protocols? But it's the same achievement, no? I mean, I would assume it's the program will be exactly the same as what we were teaching during those times.
Then I think if that will be the case, the DND will join us in going tertiary for ROTC. Because if we did that, we will not solve the reserve problem. We will not solve our defense posture problem. We will also not serve our, in the bills, the disaster relief problems. Kasi po, ang sa proposal sana, let's train a citizenry that will be first responders in case of emergencies. Ano po yun?
I think, attorney, you can still train, no? But the level of involvement during a response can be different depending on the level you are trained into. For example, if you are, let's say, sa amin sa Valenzuela, we have a junior Red Cross, no? And these are 16 years old and below. We don't expect them to respond in car crashes.
Yes, sir.
But we expect them to respond kung merong nadapa sa kanila at nasugatan sa basketball. They know how to respond. What I'm pointing out is we can train this ROTC cadets and they can still respond depending on their training. And that's the response naman will be dictated upon by, of course, the government and the persons in authority, so that we will not violate any of the protocols. No? I'm just thinking out loud.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Is that something that can be consistent already with our treaties?
Sir, kung ganun nga po, let's just not call it mandatory ROTC, because it is not. It is just another form of citizenship training that the DepEd is already doing right now. It has various programs. All we have to do is to consolidate it. We don't even need a law to do that. The K-12 program already has that integrated to make them employable upon 12 years old. That includes citizenship training. So ang sa akin lang po, kung ganun din lang po ang direksyon natin, ba't pa ho nating kailangan ng batas? Kasi po, ang talagang pinupuntirya nating lahat dito sa forum na ito ay ma-solve natin ang reserve component ng Armed Forces of the Philippines. Yung po rin ang aming pakay. Our role here is not to pretend that we have a monopoly of how to mold young minds. We do not have that. We do not even pretend to have the competence to even begin to say that. Our role here is to tell everyone here present that the country needs a reserve force. And the time to do it is now, before an emergency arises. And the way to do it is through a very well-studied single point of responsibility with addressing all of the problems. No? Just to digress one bit. Ang problema po doon sa kaninang napag-usapan, una po, this only, I think, is in the pilot. No? Kasi po, hindi po pa pinag-uusapan dyan yung private schools. Even if you have a grievance machinery there, hindi rin ho nakasabi dyan kung saan darating yun. So sa private schools din po yan. And it does not solve the problem of conflicting jurisdictions. Sa sinabi po kanina ni General Rodil, ang primary source ng mga magtuturo dyan at implementors would be active members of the armed forces and the reserve. These are all under the jurisdiction of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Therefore, the Grievance Committee will simply just pass it on because they're all covered by the Articles of War. And insofar as DepEd is concerned, kukunti din lang po yan eh. Based on the based on the way it's it's structured, unless nandun ka naman sa teacher portion, in which case covered ka ng DepEd kung nandun ka naman sa nandun ka sa public school. Kung nasa private school ka, ang first impulse ng DepEd dyan, internal disciplinary machinery ng eskwela yan, may appeals process tayo, paakyat ng region hanggang makarating yan ng secretary. So hindi po talaga nare-resolve. Kaya doon sa isang suggestion namin na binigay na po namin sa aming position paper, we wanted to vest by law this same commission and the Department of Citizen Service Trainings that it creates in the various schools with jurisdiction to actually decide those cases right there. Wala nang ipapasa-pasa, whether it's an Armed Forces of the Philippines colonel or a superintendent of schools or whatever, madidesisyon na po ng commission yun dahil yung mismong disciplinary board, which is inherent in the commission and at the department level, can solve it there. Tapos may periods po sila. May periods po doon kung kailan dapat madesisyonan, pati yung appeal. Ang estimate po namin dyan in less than a year. A complaint filed properly at the level of the Department of Citizen Service Training will be decided, including the appeals with finality, in under 1 year. If the disciplinary board of the commission is created. Right now, the present version of the bill does not include it. But in our proposed substitute bill, it is incorporated there. No? It addresses everything from hazing, from graft and corruption. And in terms of deterrence, all we did is to increase the penalty to the maximum level. If you are, as a deterrent, no? If you are part of an implementor, miski sino ka pa, basta implementor ka ng Citizen Service Training Act, if you commit the offense, the imposable penalty will be at the highest level, kung criminal. Kung civil, ganun din. I mean, you will be subjected to the same structures, no? But this time, yung commission na po ang magdi-decide. I mean, those are just some suggestions, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. On the same topic? Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
And good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Actually, I just would like to clarify something since we're already discussing mandatory ROTC in senior high school. But I think when we review the proposed bills of our honorable senators, it is about mandatory ROTC in college. So are we already on the trajectory of mandating ROTC in senior high school? And I'm also wondering why there are already schools that are about to pilot ROTC in those schools. I'm not sure if that requires an enabling law or just simply a memorandum between government agencies if you're already about to start the testing of such a program at the soonest time possible.
We're in the process of deciding whether to, as you know, there are several proposals, and we're in the process of deciding whether it will be purely on the collegiate level or basic education. But since the DND is ultimately the end user of this bill, we are leaning towards their proposal of mandating this in the senior high school. So that's where we are right now. But just to move on with this topic, I would like to request from the DND to focus on this declaration that our own country filed, no? And we still want to have clarity on this declaration, especially on that exemption that was mentioned earlier. I do understand the manifestation of Attorney Daanoy. However, we still need to clearly explain, no, if our proposal will be in conflict with this declaration that we filed in 2003. Again, the protocol was ratified by the Senate, will be enacting a law that will mandate ROTC. We don't want a law that will precisely go against a treaty that the Senate once ratified. So we need a very detailed study on this, and we will definitely look into this matter in great detail. The same, Attorney Reyes, I understand your arguments, but I would like to request also some more. I know you gave us an extensive position paper, no? But I would like to also work with you on how to come up with different concepts that will not violate this protocol. Your proposal is on a collegiate level. In fact, that was also my proposal originally, but I want to give a lot of preference to what the end user is requesting from the Senate, no? Which is senior high school. Having that in mind, what are the other concepts that we can work with, no? So that we also satisfy the request of the end user, no? I know your proposal is different from their proposal. My proposal is different from their proposal. But we have to give a lot of weight at the end of the day to the end user who is requesting this, because definitely they'll be the ones in the front line implementing this law, no?
Chair, I'd like to ask a question to the DND representatives. I'd like to know why we are pushing for mandatory ROTC in senior high school, because as presented by our fellow speakers from the UP Vanguard, we will not violate the UN Convention if ever ROTC will be mandatory in college. I'm not saying that I'm for mandatory ROTC in college, but considering the various arguments presented, we will not violate that convention if it will be in college. So, and that is also the proposal of our senators. Actually, all of them, when I read the proposed bills, they want it to be in college. So why is there a need, why is there a preference for ROTC in senior high school and not in college?
I'll answer that. The logic there is there are only less than 20% of our high school students that go to college. And the concept here is to train everyone, no? Not only the 20% that goes to college. That is the basic logic of this proposal. There's one proposal from Senator Pacquiao who calls for the reinstatement of ROTC in senior high school. And his logic there is because during the early phase of ROTC, the requirement is first year and second year college, which is equivalent to our grades 11 and grades 12 here. So that is his logic, no? And that's why, again, no, I'm leaning towards the proposal of the end user, because they know best and they will implement this law at the end, and they know what the requirements of the country will be. And but having listened to all of these arguments, especially from Attorney Reyes, we will really look into this detail, and we want to make sure that when we sponsor this bill, there will be no violation of any treaties that our very own Senate approved in the past. We will also find a middle ground, hopefully, no, with the proposal of the DND and also from the UP Vanguard, no? Now, at the end of the day, what we want here is really a law that is implementable, a law that our end users will find useful, and a law that will not violate any of the treaties that we ratified in the past, no? This is a work in progress. We're looking for a common ground, and we're still adjusting to what we hear from this hearing. All right? So we'll request that from DND. There's another issue here, no? The space. I think this was raised by the private school association during the last hearing, that not all of our senior high school have the luxury of spaces to conduct ROTC. And I would like to hear from DepEd as to how to address this issue, no?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
the concept, if there's in the issue on space, if the private schools will be limited by the space that they have, we have proposed a clustering of schools. And the clustering of schools can be resulted to when there are limitations of space, not only from the private sector, but also from the public sector. And that cluster would now choose from among those schools in the areas who have more spacious space where they can have the training. That's the proposal that we have come up with. And also to request the local government unit to provide also spaces in the community.
So, Yusek, I know for a fact right now that some of our senior high schools are using the voucher system. And the voucher system is also being used in the private schools. No? Admittedly, the small private schools don't have the luxury of space. Some of them are buildings.
Yes, sir.
And this is where the problem comes in. No? How will they conduct senior high school when their schools are typically buildings or enclosed gyms? Meron kaming mga schools in Valenzuela na enclosed gym lang yung kanilang open space. No? And of course, they can not conduct trainings in one go. No? They have to schedule the trainings. So how do you address this type of logistical constraints?
If the training program will involve a really open space, the private sector usually they look for spaces where they will hold their events. No, not if they are only confined to a building, then the usual thing that they do is they look for other spaces. No? Sometimes they partner with DepEd and with the local government unit for the spaces of their events. No? In this case, sir, if the mandatory ROTC will be implemented in all the schools, then if the school is limited by space, then we can make some arrangement to cluster all of the senior high schools, hold the training in a very spacious area where usually our public schools have in the provinces and in the rural areas. And if that is still not enough, then we can still request the local government unit to provide us spaces that they have.
In other words, the private schools can combine with the public schools.
That is the idea, sir.
So they can cluster. Like for example, if in one cluster, one of the schools there will have ample space, they can combine and conduct the trainings there.
That is the idea, sir. And I think based on experience also when the ROTC was implemented years before, that was also the resulting method of training the ROTC. In fact, even if the colleges have spaces in their campuses, they also cluster themselves and then trained also in military camps like in BNS, in the, what you call this, in the Army camps, in Navy camps in Port Bonifacio. That was what we did before. But in this case, if the spaces of the private schools would really not be enough, then the resulting proposal there, or alternative there, is to cluster these schools.
Thank you, Yusek. We'd like to hear from the private schools. I think we have some representatives from the private school. Any comments po? Sa Kokopea? About sa walang Kokopea. Okay. Any comments from PASUK? I think PASUK is the Association of State Universities. So we will go from different stakeholders. No? Any comments po from PASUK? Since kayo rin po may senior high school, some of your state universities accommodate senior high schools. Any comments on any of the things that we discussed earlier?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. So it is correct that some SUCs, actually quite a few, do have senior high school. And listening actively on the discussion, I share actually the concern of Attorney Reyes regarding that we really have to consider possible violations on the international conventions for the protections of children. Yes, Mr. Chair.
All right, but any comments po? in regards to whether it's in senior high school or college, since kayo po ay the group of the state universities. Any comments regarding should it be in college or should it be in senior high school?
As far as the PASOK is concerned, Mr. Chair, what we are supporting is the offering of ROTC mandatory in the college level.
In the college level po.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Meron ho kayong data on how many schools ang meron pong how many state universities ang merong ROTC and how many students are enrolled in the ROTC program?
Apology, Mr. Chair, I don't have the data right now, but we can furnish you that later.
Okay, yeah, please submit to us. Kay General Santiago, are you
General Santos, sir. Good morning, Mr. Chair. I'm also with the state universities and colleges. So I have the same position as Attorney Rosales. We are representing President Tirso Ronquillo, who is the president of PASOK.
General Santos, you're also with PASOK, same group.
Yes,
group.
Mr. Chair.
Sa position nyo is tertiary ang ROTC.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. How about Ms. Rose Balgos? Ma'am, sir?
Hello, sir.
Any comments po?
Yung position po namin, actually sa PCRI, nag-conduct po kasi kami ng survey 2 years ago or tungkol dun sa mandatory ROTC. So, ang sa amin po ay revisions or amendment of NSTP law wherein na hindi na po siya, dalawang component lang sana, yung disaster preparedness at saka military service. So that kung yung bata ay gusto niya NSTP, ayaw niya ng military, mag-undergo siya. Pero bago siya mag-graduate, magkakameron ng cross-training. So ito yung kumukuha ng disaster preparedness kasi yung nakikita kasi namin, dalawa lang naman ang problema ng bansa. Yung disaster at saka yung military. So, dalawa na lang. Kung ikaw ay pumili ka ng disaster preparedness, whether you are in private or in public, bago ka makagraduate, kailangan mag-training ka sa military. Kasi ito naman ang sa military, bago ka makagraduate, kailangan ka mag-training ng disaster para walang kontra. Kasi kung yung konsepto nila kasi ay ROTC more on military ang naisa-isip ng tao. So maraming mga magulang na nagsasabi na mayroong corruption, mayroong mga so nabuhay itong NSTP. So kung ang NSTP ang kukuha ka, kailangan mayroon ka ring background sa military. So magkameron ng cross-training. Kahit saan man po ilagay yung kasi ako nagtataka lang ako, bakit nagkakameron ngayon ng mga violations. Kasi kung ako ay nag-training ako, advanced graduate ako ng FEU, first year college lang din ako noon. 2 taon yung basic namin from grade MS 11 to 12. So ibig sabihin, 16 lang din ako na, tsaka 17 ako. Nag-advance ako nung 3rd year ako, tsaka 4th year. So, wala naman akong narinig noon na nag-violate. Ako, nag-graduate ako ng advance, hindi naman ako nag-military hanggang ngayon. So, ang sa akin lang, yung nakikita ko lang dyan, nakikita ko sa mga kabataan ngayon, bilang nanay ako, kailangan may training yung bata. Kasi hindi lang naman military ang tinuturo dun sa ROTC. Tinuturuan ka maging matatag, tinuturuan ka maging mabuting tao. Yung hindi na ituturo minsan ng mga magulang, yung mga hindi sumusunod ng mga bata sa mga magulang, nai-implement doon kasi meron silang kasing edad din doon na nagiging role model nila. Hindi lahat ng tinuturo doon sa ROTC yung mga military, yung tinuturo doon yung realidad. Nagiging ano yung pag-iisip ng isang tao kasi hindi naman mayayaman ng lahat na tao sa Pilipinas. Kung nag-undergo ka ng ROTC, at the end of the day of your life, magagamit mo yun sa totoong buhay. So sa amin, ang posisyon namin sa PCRI, ulitin ko, nag-conduct kami ng survey sa mga regions kasi ang PCRI, ang ano namin, ang group namin is ROTC, ako galing sa Facebook. Sa ngayon, meron kami active members na mga 13,000 people from different schools. So, yun ang inaano namin, hindi na kailangan magkameron ng batas, ang kailangan lang para hindi ko kontra yung mga leftists o dito tayo sa NSTP. I-activate natin yung military, dalawa. Yan ang imambaturin natin. Pag nagkameron ng cross-training yan, pareho ang alam ang military, pareho ang alam ng disaster preparedness, which I think yun yung the best na naiisip namin sa situation natin ngayon. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, ma'am. Like to also hear from CSC. Any comments regarding the discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just to put it into proper context, Mr. Chair, because there is a mention that the problem of the country is calamity and military. I would like to say that it's not the military the problem. There may be the preparedness, but not the military per se.
Thank you, Sec, for that clarification. Any comment, attorneys, regarding the discussion?
Yes, sir. I'd like to point out some issues which I think the Commission might be interested to look at. First, the creation of positions, because earlier on, we were talking about augmenting the personnel complement to address the imposition of this program, whether it be ROTC or citizen services training. Also, something that was not pointed out earlier on was the jurisdiction of the Commission. Even though there will be a grievance committee which will be created by the law, it does not discount the possibility that for members of the civil service, it may be appealable to us. Because under the RACs and under the EO 292, we have appellate jurisdiction over cases involving civil servants. As regards the private sector, it will be under a different law, which is the existing, they may appeal it with the Court of Appeals or any other appellate body. Also, as regards the, the training, also we would like to emphasize with Attorney Reyes that as long as we are assured that we are not violating any international treaties, we are up for this.
Thank you, Attorney. Tesda, any comment po? Attorney Henota, may comment kayo regarding the discussion. No? I know you had your comments last time, but dito po sa mga pinag-usapan kanina, any comments?
Yes, Senator. I would just like to comment about the there was a mention earlier of there is no need to this is regarding the grievance machinery, that there is no more need to to submit the recommendation to some other authority, because I think the lines would be blurred, since there are instances when some cases involve the military and some cases involve the civilians, so there would be different jurisdictions and different laws applicable to them, since the military could be tried in the military courts, and the civilians could only be tried in the civil courts. So I think there has to be different authority to decide on the matter.
Thank you. To Kabataan Party List, Angelica Reyes. Angelica, let's keep it to the discussions that were that were talked about earlier.
Okay. Ayan. Okay. So, ano lang po, from Kabataan Party List, mula doon sa mga talakayan kanina, di talagang nag-a-agree tayo doon sa stance na naipahayag, na itong current proposal ay talagang in contrary to existing laws and treaties that we entered into. At gusto lang siguro nating i-remind din na yung mga rationale behind the proposal na nabanggit hindi lamang mula doon sa mga nauna nating public hearing, kung hindi kahit doon sa proposal nito sa Kongreso, ay dalawa. Una, at kiniklaim din naman ito ng military, lalo na kanina when we are questioning about the reservist, kung magiging reservist ba itong ating mga estudyante na mga 16 and 17-year-olds. So, nabanggit na hindi lang namang ito tungkol doon sa reserve component o doon sa defense component, kung hindi higit lalo about din ito doon sa inculcation ng nationalism at discipline sa mga kabataan. So, ibig sabihin, ang end user nito ay napakahalaga na ma-highlight natin na bukod sa yung mag-i-implement na DND, importante yung napakalaking stakeholder na ating mga kabataan. So siguro po, gusto natin din kung papayagan ng committee o magkaroon ng mekanismo ang technical working group ng committee na ito na mag-conduct din talaga ng wide democratic wide consultations among youth, among parents, ganyan po, para marinig din po natin kung ano yung tindig po, ano yung stances nila, kasi for all the hearings po pinapakinggan natin yung proposal ng DND kasi sila yung implementer, sila yung end user, pero ang primary stakeholder din ito, mga estudyante, mga magulang, importante na mapakinggan natin sila, lalong-lalo na very controversial po itong proposal na ito, lalong-lalo na lalo pong nag-raise yung concern at yung worry ng Kabataan Party List dahil nitong nakaraan, right, I think few weeks after lang nung first natin na hearing kung saan nakaupo ulit kami doon, ay nangyari yung incident kay Willie Amihoy. Si Willie Amihoy ay isang cadet, ROTC cadet sa Iloilo na napatay ng isang trainer ng advanced ng isang corps commander, advanced trainer ng ROTC, so at yung sa isang interview doon ng PNP chief ng Iloilo, sinabi mismo nung PNP chief na nung tinanong siya kung related ba to sa ROTC, ang sagot niya, baka kasi syempre hindi natin maaalis na junior niya yon. So we are very afraid of that culture na manatili at lalong ma-reinforce, ma-strengthen pa dito sa mandatory ROTC, hindi lang basta sa college, kung hindi talagang sa mga senior high school natin, sa mga menor de edad natin. So, yun po yung concern na nire-raise ng Kabataan Party List. At saka, kung ano rin po kung katulad nung sinabi kanina na yung recruitment ay magiging voluntary pa rin. So siguro our suggestion remains for the military na siguro before requiring or before making it compulsory, mandatory to our minors, to our students to be part of the military or the reserve force of the military, siguro talagang kailangan natin na ang isang paraan doon ay hindi pagpipilit, kung hindi talagang pag-aayos mula sa loob at ng reputation din, kasi we cannot deny the fact that the reputation of the military has been blood-stained, lalo na for the past weeks. We remember the joint operation of the military and the police and the killings of 14 Negros farmers. So yan po yung mga worry natin na syempre hindi magandang impression ang nadudulot nun sa mga kabataan natin. So baka maging hesitant din sila na pumaloob sa training na conducted ng military. So ayun lang naman po yung sa Kabataan Party List. We reiterate na kailangan yung fundamental na karapatan ng mga kabataan, estudyante sa choice ay protektahan ng ating Senado, ng ating mga mambabatas, at huwag gawing mandatory ang ROTC. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Angelica. And then Akbayan Youth. Again, let's keep it to the discussions earlier, no? Because this is the second hearing, and you already stated your position last time. So this hearing will only focus on the discussions itemized on the screen, so that will cover all the loose ends.
Okay, hello. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. So, first and foremost, I would just like to address the parte naman to ng sinabi kanina na ang gusto ng, the notion of providing a mandatory ROTC is to promote love and service to the country, according to President Duterte, love of country and good citizenship, no? But I don't think, in Akbayan Youth, we don't think that good citizenship necessarily equates to military training. We see that the military training component, of the ROTC, or the ROTC itself, is a violent institution, given nga ng cases before nga ni Mark Chua, and katulad nga na nabanggit ng katabi natin na si Willie Amihoy, no? Labas doon, nabanggit kanina na aabot po ng 21 billion ang possible expenditures when it comes to implementation for the first 2 years at least. Even so, na mas maliit yun for future implementations. Kung titignan natin yung proposed budget for 2019, 659.3 ay for education. 21 billion is already 31.4 of the allocated education budget. Sabihin man natin na labas ito at hindi naman to manggagaling sa education budget dahil nga sa DND, according to the discussion kanina, sa DND ito manggagaling. That 31% sana ay na-allocate na dun sa pag-create talaga ng facilities for other forms of learning na hindi lang composed of military training, which is also a valid part of good citizenship and love of country. We also submitted the position paper. Kasama doon, we recognize that patriotism, service, and willingness to sacrifice oneself is part and parcel of being a good citizen. However, there are other ways to pursue this without making mandatory ROTC a law. There are other programs such as the Boy and Girl Scouts of the Philippines, in which nakakaroon naman sila ng survival training, ng response training for first aid. Nandiyan rin naman po ang Red Cross. And also the Sangguniang Kabataan. Why not strengthen institutions that are already existing rather than implement an institution that has already proven itself to be prone to corruption and prone to abuse, katulad nga ng nabanggit na concerns kanina, which is the rationale kung bakit tayo gumagawa ng grievance committee, diba? So, if those are already existing, opportunities, why not divest the funds instead to there? We're not saying that ROTC shouldn't exist. We're not saying na dapat tanggalin ang ROTC component, but the idea to make ROTC mandatory is removing also the freedom of the individual to choose their form of service. While nagkaroon nga ng interpretation that the Constitution says that it is, or the merit of the Constitution says it's always supposed to be military training, but it says military or civil service. So meron namang pong civil forms of service, meron namang other ways to train on disaster preparedness, on disaster response, which is a clear need, and we also agree that it may be addressed, but being a good citizenship isn't found in military training alone, And also, I would also like to point out, that it is hardly the business of the government to teach patriotism when we are selling our lands to China. So it's a little, we're sending a mixed message if we can't assert our national sovereignty, while at the same time we're trying to teach these values to our young people. Yun lamang po. Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Raul, Manuel, any comments?
Before I proceed with my comments, I will just have a few more questions, Mr. Chair, if I may be allowed. I'd like to ask I'd like to confirm if the pilot testing of mandatory ROTC in some senior high schools will begin in academic year 2019-2020.
No, that's been the plan, but I think there's now a change of strategy because precisely because of this law, no? And I think the implementers, both DepEd and DND, is also looking at the pace of this law. So whether this law will be approved or not approved, then they will act correspondingly.
Okay. And I'd also like to formally request to the Senate committees involved in this hearing that we'd like to ask for the list of the 100 schools that are seen to be ready and will be the first ones to try mandatory ROTC. Also, to proceed with the comments, first I'd like to recognize some of our student observers who are present in this committee hearing. We have student leaders from the University of Santo Tomas, from a student publication, and student organizations. Now, we are still firm in our belief that ROTC should not be made mandatory for students, whether in college or senior high school. We'd still like to commend this committee for still accommodating and having our presence here in this committee to be heard and for our sentiments to be responded to. Even though in the first committee hearing we already raised that we are against this proposal. Now, to add to the various issues raised this afternoon, I would really like to appeal for the students, especially those in senior high school, to be heard since they're the ones who will be affected by the program. Since senior high school students are still adjusting and as a part of the K-12 program, they feel that they were part of some grand experiment. They felt that we had to undergo such burden as part of the first batches who underwent the K-12 program. That is why we support the call of Senator Wing Gatchalian to have a review of the program and to have it publicly released so that all stakeholders involved will really have a say in how the K-12 program must be well implemented more or reviewed in light of current issues before we proceed to adding another subject that will be required of all senior high school students. Also, some of the points were already mentioned by my fellow youth and student representatives, but as a final word, we students and youth also believe that we have to be nationalistic and we have to be patriotic. It is one of the things that we would like to show us the future and the hope of our country. We also try to prove that in various ways that we do in various organizations, outreach programs, when we go to communities. It's just that during these times that we have government agencies like the DND and the AFP that try to show that they are the ones who are ready to teach and that they are credible enough to teach nationalism and patriotism, kaming mga estudyante at mga kabataan, kami pa mismo yung maghikayat sa aming fellow students and youth na mag-ROTC if ever our armed forces and the DND can first show that they are really there to address threats that are not just coming but are already there. For example, threats to our national sovereignty, attacks on our fisher folk in the West Philippine Sea, especially now that our DND and the AFP will have significantly higher budget for the next, for 2019 for this fiscal year. So that would be all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Chairman Ronald Cordema, any comments? Again, let's keep it to the topics at hand. No, let's not digress so much on other topics. We'll have another hearing on those, but let's keep it to the topics at hand.
Yes, sir. The stand of the National Youth Commission, Pambansang Komisyon ng Kabataan, ay we are supporting the return of mandatory ROTC. And naisip nga namin na una, kung pwede, mandatory ROTC for colleges, mandatory CAT for high schools, mandatory, kung pwede nga gawin mandatory yung Boy Scout and Girl Scout sa elementary schools also. Kaya yung sinabi ng akbayan mo, totoo yun. Dahil madami rin na itutulong Boy Scout, yung Red Cross, yung mga ganon. And
but Ronald, your stance is mandatory CAT and mandatory college.
Diyan sa part na yan, sir, because
What's your
there's
official
conflicting stand between the armed forces and the UP Vanguard. Nahirapan naman ako, sir, dahil pareho akong senior sa UP ROTC ang dalawa, commander ng AFP Reserve, tsaka aming leadership dito. Basta we are for the return of ROTC, sir.
But what's the official stand of the Philippine Youth Commission? Dahil
yes, sir.
the Philippine Youth is the agency or the organization tasked to look after the welfare and the future.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
No, so
And the recent survey of Pulse Asia, more than 80% of the country supports the return of the ROTC. That also includes more than 80% of the Filipino youth. And you know, as chairman of the National Youth Commission, I've been observing what the youth ministers and the NYC chairmen of other countries, of neighboring countries, are doing. Talagang for Singapore, for South Korea, and nandiyan China, Japan, they are orienting their youth towards nation building, towards military training, towards preparedness. Kahit communist countries like North Korea, Russia, kahit nga China, they are also preparing their youth towards military training and training on nationalism. So, kanina, narinig ko dito sa atin, yung private schools, medyo hesitant sila. Ang masasabi ko lang dyan, dapat lahat ng kabataan ay handang maglingkod para sa bayan. Huwag natin sabihin na yung mga nasa public schools lang, magiging discrimination yan. Na yung mga walang pambayad nasa public schools, nagmamandatory ROTC, tapos yung mga nasa private schools, hindi. Ang explanation nila ay kulang sa space. Saan ba nag-physical education, PE, ang inyong mga kabataan dyan? Kapag ba dumating ang lindol, ang kalabang, at kung ano-ano, disasters, emergency sa ating bansa, exempted ba ang mga nasa private schools? Hindi. They need to defend themselves, their families, their communities, just like those in the public schools. Kaya dapat, walang discrimination na gano'n na kapag public and private, iba yung training. Parang sa Singapore, limited yung space nila, talaga. Pero nakakapag-train sila for national defense. Pangalawa, yung sa expenditures na sinasabi. You know, the first concern of any country or any republic is the survival of the state. Lahat ng benefits, lahat ng departamento, Department of Health, Department of lahat na, DSWD, wala lahat yan kung yung buong bansa ay gigiba dahil sa isang national emergency o pagdating ng mga kalaban. So kailangan natin talaga mag-spend for national defense, national security, and napaka-basic niyan to train your millions of youth towards nation building, towards national preparedness. Pag hinayaan mong lumaki ang mga na walang training, magiging tambay ang karamihan dyan at karamihan dyan lumalaban sa ating gobyerno. And yan ang purpose ng NSTP, National Service Training Program, which is a failure. Masasabi ko yan as a former Corps Commander in UP at madaming NSTP, CWTS program sa UP, kada colleges meron, walang standard yan. Kung ano yung ma-invento ng college, College of Education, College of Fine Arts, yung nga last time sinabi ko, merong NSTP sila, origami. Diba? How can that stand as a national training? National service, diba? And sa NSTP law, nilagay dyan na yung graduate ng NSTP ay magiging part ng National Service Training Corps. Until now, more than 15 years, how can you mobilize all those youth who trained under CWTS? Wala. Hindi mo maipapatawag yung mga yan for something, for national defense or for the survival of the state. Kaya nandiyan yung ROTC, alam natin maraming naging problema sa ROTC. Napaka-ipokrito naman natin kung sasabihin natin perpekto. At katulad na sinasabi kanina ng ating mga kasamang youth leaders dito, gawin mo ng perpekto ang armed forces bago i-implement. Walang perpektong bagay. Parang sinasabi mo na huwag muna magkaroon ng car accident bago magkaroon ng bilihan ng kotse sa Pilipinas. O isisisi mo sa Toyota, o sa Honda, o kay Henry Ford, pag may nababangga dito sa Pilipinas, walang perpekto. We are trying to develop everything, and now under the Duterte administration, we want change in our society. We're trying to bring back a better ROTC with the help of our senators. Kaya naririto tayo, tinatangka natin baguhin kung ano mga nangyari dati. Huwag natin i-blame yung kay Mark Wilson Chua Dahil katraidoran yan kay Mark Wilson Chua, he wanted a better ROTC program talaga. He was very idealistic, he wanted this. He was a cadet officer, gusto niya ng bagong, magandang ROTC. Para isisi natin, para sabihin niyo ngayon sa libingan ni Mark Wilson Chua na kaya niya gustong ipa-abolish ang ROTC because of Mark Wilson Chua. Medyo, hindi yun talaga, mali yun. And for the longest time, madami namang napapatay sa fraternities. Bakit hindi na-abolish ang mga fraternities sa Pilipinas? Yung kay Mark Wilson Chua, it's an isolated case talaga. The 100-year history ng ROTC, isa yung napatay. I-erase niya yung sa Iloilo. Nagsabi na mismo ang CHED. Hindi AFP nagsabi, CHED ang nagsabi, si Chairman Popoy de Vera, na sinasabi niya na he's no longer in the ROTC program. And nakaaway na yung tao na napatay niya. To blame the Philippine ROTC program, parang hindi tama yun. I attended the veterans parade ng mga veterana natin na isang araw, naging iyakan sila sa history ng Hunters ROTC kung paano nila ipinagtanggol ang bayan. Sila ay na-train ipagtanggol ang bayan through the ROTC program ng kanilang schools. At kailangan natin ibalik yan ngayon na mas maayos na. So, tayo po, sa National Youth Commission, we are urging yung two sides dito na mag-ayos kayo on the version. Yun naman talaga ang problema kung it's in the college or it's in the senior high school. Pero karamihan dito, and karamihan ng kabataang Pilipino, karamihan ng mga Pilipino, more than 80%, ay gusto ibalik ang ROTC program sa bansa at gusto gamitin ito for national defense, for disaster preparedness lalo, dahil lampas 20 ang bagyo kada taon sa ating bansa. So to end po, gusto lang po natin sabihin na itong ROTC gusto ibalik ni Pangulong Duterte dahil meron tayong banta ng terorismo, banta ng insurgency, at yung mga kalamidad na pumupunta sa ating bansa taon-taon. Itong mga kabataan ito na tinatawag natin pag-asa ng bayan, we must train them. Hindi pwedeng kanya-kanyang interpretation ang 50 million kabataan kung paano nila ipagtatanggol ang bansa. Hindi nila mapapagtanggol yan pag hindi sila na-train. We need to train everybody to defend themselves, to defend their families, to defend our country. And ngayon po, patapos na yung Kongreso. Ito po sa unang senay, binanggit na ating Pangulo na ito urgent measure niya. And nalalagdi na lang yung 2 linggo ng Mayo. Sa House of Representatives also, naipasa na sa second reading. Kaya papasalamat kami sa Senado na ito po fast track niya, na alam niyo yung mga concerns po. So maraming salamat po from the National Youth Commission. We are supporting your measure to return the ROTC program.
But Ronald, we need your official NYC position, no? Of course, NYC, again, when it comes to youth concerns, your voice is quite relevant. So we need your official position whether you are inclined to support senior high school, inclined to support college level, or even both, no? Kasi I remember last time parang you said both pa nga, no? So, but we need your official position as an organization, no?
We will submit the resolution.
Gusto nyo ibalik, but we need an official, based on your studies, based on your research, and of course, based on your development plan. Kasi meron kayong youth development plan, looking forward. So, we have to align this also to your youth development plan.
Yes, sir. We will submit the resolution.
Thank you, Ronald. Ched, ma'am, I know we tasked you to give us a briefing on or an update on the NSTP, but this will take a long time, no? So let's just keep it to the topics at hand right now, and we'll have a different session regarding NSTP. Coincidentally, Senator Bam Aquino also filed a resolution. I filed a resolution. He filed a resolution to review the NSTP law. No? But we'll tackle that on a separate matter kasi medyo mahaba ho yan. Only the topics at hand lang po.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, the Commission prepared the official position paper, and we will be submitting that as soon as our chairman signed it. The Commission does not oppose the reinstitution of the 2-year mandatory course of Reserve Officers Training course in the tertiary level. For the meantime, yun muna po, Mr. Chairperson. And then what we would like to do is to submit our signed official paper once it is already duly signed by our chairperson. And just in addition, yes, Mr. Chair, that the commission is actually monitoring the implementation of NSTP. And just for brief update, among the three components of NSTP, the CWTS, the Civic Welfare Training Service, in the 5 years database, 90% po siya. Siya yung pinakamataas. ROTC is 7%.
Yun yata
Estimate.
pinakamadali eh.
Opo. And 3% po yung last component, yung literacy training services. Yes, sir. So,
Kahapon lang ho, may celebrated my 45th birthday last Saturday. But every year meron ako USEC fun run, no? And for the first time in history of my fun run after 10 years, yesterday, ang dami nag-attend, more than 2,000, no? And then, nagulat ako. So, out of my curiosity, tinanong ko yung organizer, ba't ang dami nag-attend ngayong taon na ito? Sir, dami kasing galing pamantasan ng lungsod ng Valenzuela. Sabi ko, na-touch naman ako, mahal na mahal ako ng estudyante. Sabi niya, Senator, hindi ho dahil yan, dahil makikredit ho sa CWTS. Kaya nagpuntahan. Sabi niya, tingnan niyo ho, nag-jeep na ho sila after 5 minutes after. No, and I was quite surprised, no? I mean, kidding aside, joining a fun run doesn't seem to be like a nation-building effort, no? At least in my view. Of course, I appreciate the participation in my birthday fun run, but in terms of nation building, it's really far cry from anything that has to do with nation building, and that's why we really need to review and revisit NSTP. And there's a clamor, no? Here in the Senate, 2 senators filed to review NSTP, and with the able leadership of Chairman Popoy, I think it's really about time to review this, no? And in a different session, we'll hear this review. No? Thank you, Director. We also have a representative from ALCU, ALCOCOA, the Organization of Local Universities and Colleges. No? Dr. Arcega, any comments po?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. For the end of local colleges and universities, we don't see any problem also implementing the same for K11 and 12. As earlier mentioned, prior to K-12 implementation, we have this ROTC applicable for, as mentioned by Ms. Balgos, for first year and second year college. We call it then as MS11 and MS12. We must admit that NSTP was implemented primarily because we found some problems in the implementation of ROTC then, but it should not stop us from rethinking and reconsidering re-implementing the same, especially now that among our youth, we have big problem on discipline. Just like I'm the Executive Vice President of the University of Makati, and we've implemented NSTP program 15 years ago, and I'm so sad to hear from the numbers presented that 90% all over the country are into CWTS, and only 7% are in the ROTC. Prior to this meeting, I really have a strong instruction to review the NSTP program in the university and to give priority to ROTC. I guess on the part of CHED, aside from the numbers presented, ma'am, siguro we can work together and try to find out what happened to the 7% of those enrolled in the ROTC. Right now, the University of Makati have this ROTC, the biggest. Medyo nagulat ako dun sa 90 tsaka 7%, no? While we give kids options whether to go to LTS, CWTS, and ROTC, we have this hope in mind that they will end up with ROTC, no? So I'm so happy that UMAC as the pilot center for K-12 program have implemented ROTC and ROTC, and we won in the National Capital Region competition, and so with the national competition for tactical inspection. And I'll be happy to see, the old days kids doing this military training. I just have reservation on record, Mr. Chair. we should not have the same failure of the past. Those people who will be assigned to implement the program should be more responsible to implement the same. It is the responsibility of the military organization to ensure that ROTC is worth dying and is worth the time. Until now, may mga ilang beses siguro ako nagpalit off the record. Ilang beses yata ako nagpalit ng commandant. Kasi nagugulat ho ako doon sa mga simpleng sitwasyon. Naintindihan ko yung mga bata kung saan sila lang gagaling. In fact, prior to the National Youth Council manifesting, I really would want to give the challenge to the ROTC group. Right now, the government gave us the opportunity to implement NSCP, LTS, CWTS, and ROTC. Mukhang responsibilidad ng military group na magbuo ng isang programa na kung saan may invite o ma-encourage ang mga bata na mag-shift sa ROTC. Yeah, I go for mandatory, pero sa totoo lang ho, mahirap i-violate yung gusto ng bata. Hindi lang ho sila pumupunta sa CWTS dahil madali. Kasi nakikita nila kung sino sila at para kanino sila. Wala akong problemang i-mandatory yun. Siguraduhin lang po natin na ang mga values na i-imbibe ng mga bata ay para nga sa bayan. Kasi ho, kung ma-mandatory natin at may mga taliwas pa rin hong mag-i-implement nito, at mananatili ho yung mga tao na nag-i-implement nito na mali katulad ng dati, the program will be a natural death the second time around. Though I made a stand in the ARCO that we have to implement mandatory both for K11 and 12 and college, it is with our deepest prayer that the implementing mechanism will be different as it has been implemented before. As to the budget, I guess we don't have to create a center or something to take charge of this. Today, we've implemented an SCP, charged to the AIP of different institutions. So I'm running the program. We're running the NSCP, the ROTC program in our local universities charged to our respective annual investment plan. So you don't have to think about saan kukunin ng baril na gagamitin, saan papasweldo ng commandant and all. Natutuwa ho kami sa AFP, iniikot ho nila, tapos nagre-request ho kami at binibigyan ho kami ng karapatan na palitan pagka hindi okay. Just a call away. So kung ganito ho magiging ka-vigilant, mukhang okay ho ito. Sa University of Makati ho, sila yung aking ginagamit na, we don't have enough security guard to take care of discipline in the campus. So I see to it that my 30 people in charge of ROTC are the one who disciplining their core students and all. We were effective. We're effective. Siguro lang ho, kinakailangan palakasin lang yung supervisory mechanism din ng mga universities over commandants, over the military organization, and we should be given the same authority to relieve them if there are people not aligned to the program. But we go for mandatory, Mr. Chair, both for 11 and 12. Kasi ho yun yung tamang panahon para makasama sila. Yung first year college, medyo late na ho eh. In fact, dapat nga ibabayan sa baba pa ho eh. Kaya lang alam ko sina Yusek hindi papayag. Yun yung disiplina pagmamahal sa bayan ay dapat tinuturo sa mas maagang edad. So, yung 11 and 12, nagme-member nga sila ng fraternity eh. Nagpapasugat nga sila at nagpapabugbog dun sa mga tao na wala namang kinalaman para sa bayan. So bakit hindi mo natin gawin ang programa para sa ating mga kabataan? Let's give a try, no? Yun lang po, Mr. Chair, siguro we can have actual survey institutional from all of us, from PASOK, from private universities, from local colleges, para ho pag naipasan natin ang batas, wala na hong masyadong kokontra. Mas maganda ho sigurong maumpisahan mo natin, Mr. Chair, sa isang scientific survey na kung saan ay magpa-participate kami at nabibigyan namin ng tamang posisyon ang pag-implementa ng programa. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Arcega, for that enlightening comment. I take it that the local universities and colleges, state universities and colleges, and CHED are all in support of reinstating ROTC at the tertiary level. But you also mentioned that you're supporting also reinstatement in senior high school. So gusto nyo senior high school and tertiary level? Is that what you are saying?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So both levels
Yes.
po ang mandatory?
Yes.
Okay.
We just have to have some sort of differentiation in the delivery of the training program.
Okay.
Maybe there are some activities not applicable to 11 and 12. But I don't have any problem, Mr. Chair, implementing it mandatory, provided the implementation mechanism and those who will implement the program will be that consensus to love the program, to cascade it properly down the line, and so as not to have the same mistakes then.
Dr. Sega, earlier, without going into the detail, kanina you mentioned that you had to replace some commandants. I take it that there was some problems during the implementation of your ROTC in University of Makati. Without going into that detail, no, anong nakikita niyong mechanism to prevent those, what you experienced from recurring, and we prevent other sins of the past from happening again? Anong tingin niyo from your experience in University of Makati?
I guess we have to be critical in assigning people to hold the program. Just like any other military organization, merong isa, dalawa, 10 gumagawa eh. Pero hindi ho kasi magandang tingnan sa tingin ng mga bata. We wanted to remove corruption, we wanted to discipline the kids, but up to now, there are some guys eh. Yung mga simpleng contribution na hindi na dapat, kasi sa mga university, bawal ang contribution eh. Pati ho yung pagbili ng, medyo mahal ho kasi dahil yung uniforme, kung talagang gusto mong manalo sa tactical, dapat talaga gagastusan mo siya. Okay, so kung hindi naman, natutuwa ako sa ibang commandant t-shirt na lang, no, yung kanilang binibigay. Mukhang, Mr. Chair, kinakailangan dumaan sa isang matinding training, retraining ang mga maa-assign dito. Kasi may multiplier effect eh. Pag meron kasing isang commandant na na-assign, first is representing the entire military organization. So we can build or destroy, right? Tapos, pag narinig ko ng ibang mga bata yon, pwede hong kumalat yon at hindi na sila join din sa ROTC. Ang maganda lang sa UMAC, yung dating 200, naging parang kulang-kulang ho sa 1,000 o lampas sa 1,000 mga estudyante without us mandatorily implementing. So parang pakiramdam ko ho, may obligasyon ang ROTC implementers na pagandahin ang programa at maging inviting para sa mga estudyante. So pag sinabi ko hong I'll discuss to you in private, Mr. Senator, yung experience, pero makikita mo eh na lumalabas sila dun sa kanilang mandato. May mga tendency silang gawin ng mga bagay na hindi aprobado ng management.
Can you discuss that briefly? I'm curious now since you brought it up, and we're also looking for ways to prevent that from happening, no? Just very briefly po kung ano yung naging experience nyo and ano naging solution so that we can probably put that in the bill and we can prevent those things from happening.
Mga simple lang naman ho. Hindi naman to katulad ng dati na may pwedeng mamatay na mga estudyante. Wala naman ho. Mga ano lang, yung mga, hindi ho kasi ang protocol ng mga universities na hindi pwedeng ilabas sa mga bata sa campus kung walang ano ho ba yun? Yung waiver o dalhin sa ibang eskwelahan nang hindi alam ho ng management. Mga ganun lang naman.
So mga administrative?
Yes, more on
administrative matters. So your recommendation is the appointment of that commandant is a very crucial activity.
Yes, they have to pass through a very rigorous selection because they're not just commandant of ROTC. They're bringing in them the name of the organization, and they're tasked to bring the trust of people to the same organization. So, siguro po talagang kinakailangan may pagmamahal sa mga bata. Kinakailangan ho na maliwanag sa kanya kung sino siya at para sa yung programa. At hindi yung hirap po yung makikita ng mga bata. Siguro ho merong pagkapari at pagkapulis sa kanya na pwede siyang pare para magpayo at pwede rin naman siyang military talaga, no, maghahalo. Hindi na ho kasi po pwede ngayon yung katulad ng dati na kung kailan mo gustong sigawan, sisigawan mo, at kung kailan mo gustong saktan, pwede mong saktan. Kaya siguro ang mga taga-basic education, they will not allow it. Kasi nga ho, paglabag dun sa law on child welfare. Pero kung tama sa Mr. Chair yung pag-implemento, napakaganda. So going back to the qualifications of commandant, mukhang ito ho dapat talagang piling-pili ho, technically, professionally, and morally, na pwede ho magbaba ng programa dun sa, and then palalakasin din ho yung supervising and overseeing authority ng mga higher education institutions and private schools. And palakadin din ho siguro yung partnership and linkages. Para nga mangyayari ho, paggamat implement nating mandatory, it doesn't mean that the military group have the right to do what they want. Ibig sabihin, parang may advisory committee per school na kung saan magkakaroon ho ng check and balance. Dati ho kasi hindi ganun eh. So parang mangyayari ho, may programa in partnership with them, but still the university officials or college officials still have the say about the overall implementation of the program in the university. But just the same, Mr. Chair, I'd like to request maybe through our help, ma'am, for us to come up with a research what happened to the ROTC implementation of 7%. Malungkot ho na 97% lang pala ho yun, pero maganda rin ho siguro mapag-aralan bakit hindi umakyat from 7%. Kasi kids are given the choice to go to LTS, CWTS, and ROTC. If we have implemented NSTB for the last 15 years, dapat ho nangalahati na dapat ang ROTC. Pero bakit ho na-peg dun sa 7% yung mga batang gustong mag-enroll dun sa ROTC? Because right now, Mr. Chair, under NSTP, they have the options to go to ROTC, LTS, and CWTS. So mukhang 3% lang ho yung LTS, 7% ang ROTC, and then 90% ang CWTS. Bakit hindi po gumalaw? Dapat ho dun sa 15 taong yon ay maraming batang lumipat dun sa ROTC program. So maganda din pong pag-aralan natin. Para yun ho mga weaknesses na nakita natin, makakonsider ho natin dun sa pagbalangkas ng implementation mechanism ng ROTC.
Thank you, Dr. Arcega. Ma'am, Director.
Just to qualify po, Dr. Arcega, Mr. Chair, what I mentioned on the percentage, the 90% on CWS and 7% for ROTC and 3% for LTS is actually a 4-year academic years, starting from academic year 2013-2014 to 2016-2017. Average po yun. And yes, indeed, walang masyadong in-increase ang ROTC. Mas dumadami po yung CWTS.
Hilig yata sila mag-origami. Sabi ni origami tsaka fun run. Oo. So, ay, ma'am?
Yung tungkol po dun sa enrollment ng ROTC, kasi graduate po ako ng FEU. It happened po na yung chairman or yung in charge dun sa NSTP, ka-alumni namin. So tinatanong ko, bakit nawala yung ROTC sa FEU? Kasi during my time, kami yung mother unit ng Army. So ang nangyayari pala, pag nag-enrollment pala, wala dun part ng military na, kunwari, di ba, pag nag-enrollment, dapat may upuan sila doon. Di ba, mag-enroll yung bata. Sabihin, ano pipiliin mo? Kung mayroon doon nakalagay na naka-uniforming general, kasi ang ganda-ganda tingnan. Bata lang yan, di ba? So, ang punto ko po, bakit hindi nag-a-assign yung DND ng pag-enrollment, pupunta doon, mag-assign sila doon na tao na mag-encourage, kasi parang recruitment yan eh. O magpulis kayo, mag-ano kayo dito, di ba, PNPA. Ngayon, ang nag-i-enroll daw doon, hindi nagbubukas. Ito, sinabi sa akin ng FEU. Kasi marami kaming graduate doon. In fact, FEU third active kami talaga. Hanggang ngayon, yung president namin ng FEU sword nandyan. Ngayon, ang nangyayari pala, ang FEU, hindi siya pwedeng magkameron ng commandant or isang, batawag doon, magkakameron ng unit doon ng ROTC pag wala siyang enrollees na 200. Kasi hindi makayanan ang budget o baka ano. So, para maka-encourage ng isang university ng enrollees, kailangan may nakatayo doon. O, ikaw, dito, siyempre kung ako, recruit kita dito ka na mag-uragami, dito ka na sa akin. O, di ba? So, yun yung ma'am yung nakikita ko. Kasi kung may military, kung concern yung mga military, na dumami yung mga alagad nila, di pumusto ka doon. Ano bang ginagawa ng reservist ng APRESCOM, no? Enrollment na ngayon. Kailangan magpadala tayo ng mga kawal natin sa mga university at dumami tayong recruit. Hindi, mas marami pang recruit yung akbayan. Di ba? Yun yung sa akin. Ako yung reality kasi nagtataka ako bakit namatay na po yung ROTC. Isipin nyo, ako yung lowest mammal. Tuwing magkakamero kami ng meeting, wala akong underclass. Ako yung lowest. Tapos kinainis ako, sabi ko, asan yung mga ROTC? Ako namang recruit kasi kawawa ka kung ikaw yung lowest mammal. Yun siya yung nakikita ko kung bakit hindi umangat. Puro uragami na lang. Pero ang mga military nasaan?
Sige po, we'll take note of your observations po. General Redil, you have a few slides now to show before we terminate the...
Yes, sir. If you your indulgence, sir.
Nag-take charge.
Just like to emphasize, sir, that these 5 slides, these are among the facilities that we need to also look into creating in the different regions to cater to our ROTC training. These are already facilities existing of the Army Reserve Command. Sige, let's run through the slides. Okay. Part of the developing the so-called war-fighting competencies, the basic military skills for that. Sige, 5 slides. So as you can see, sir, sige, these are confidence courses, you know, in reaction, sir, to the statement of some of our speakers a while ago, sir. You know, this training, okay, when young people undergo this training and really hurdle obstacles, it translates to something else also in their psyche. And they remember this for a lifetime. They remember how they hurdled this kind of obstacle. And I think it also translates to how they will face obstacles, their own personal obstacles in the future, in their respective careers or in their personal lives as adults or as parents. Okay? So I think it's incumbent that we make them, okay, undergo and experience these things. Here, next slide, please. Okay, these are just among the facilities. Sige, okay. See, these are young people, okay, that also enjoy what they are doing. Okay, next. Okay. Sige. So what we are trying to emphasize this, sir, no, and I'd also like to thank the NYC Commissioner for his so-called safe answer. We will, I will not comment any more on that, as my upper class will deal with that. Attorney Gilbert is my upper class in ROTC, sir. And also, just for the record, if for Mr. Chair, regarding that ISCOF incident, if I may speak for the CHED, okay. The CHED issued an answer already to that incident and officially said that it is not an ROTC related incident and that it should not be used, the incident should not be used for any propaganda because it will smack of insensitivity to the parents of this of the victims, both of the victims. Okay, so I think we should be clear on that. CHED has already issued a statement on that incident. It is not in any way related to ROTC. And on a final note, sir, yeah, thank you very much on those slides. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, next.
And sorry. Okay.
And please, no, just to highlight the need. Okay. the need for why military training, okay? You know, historically, historically we've been at war, whether right now we're at war with climate change and all of that and other threats, okay? Historically, the world has been at war. And I think the famous quote of Thucydides, that's a Peloponnesian general in ancient times, when he said that any nation that puts too great a distinction between its warriors and its scholars will have its thinking done by cowards and its fighting done by fools. Okay? We cannot allow, you know, the way we are crafting things to be done by cowards. That's why there's really, even in the military, we always also ensure that we are able to immerse in the civilian environment. That's why we take also academic courses outside of the military institution, because that's one way we broaden our knowledge when we widen our perspective. And I think that's also the same thing that should be done for our young people. We should be encouraging them to undergo these things and telling them of the importance of military training, not only as a mandatory requirement, but for the development of their character. And I think any nation in the world will attest to the importance of these kinds of training. They have applied this in so many ways. For even the corporate world applies the principles of war to its business strategies. I'd just like to make those statements. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, General Rodil. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just one last additional question that this committee might be interested in looking into. Merong mga statistics na present kanina. The NYC chair said na 80% according to survey of the youth wants the revival of mandatory ROTC, and yet according to CHED, 90% of students does not participate in the military training or do not take up ROTC, at mas marami yung nasa CWTS. At sabi rin kanina ni Sir Arcega na hindi naman dahil lang sa nadadalian sila, kung hindi sila into the ROTC. So I think that's may disjunct doon, at merong kailangang pag-aralan. Bakit ganoon? Kasi kung nagpe-present tayo ng mga statistics and na may dissonance, magkaiba, and yet we both support the revival of mandatory ROTC, medyo lumalabnaw yung mga basihan natin.
Thank you, thank you. Yusek, and
yeah, Mr.
final
Chair,
words?
just to formalize our proposal that there should be an inclusion in the bill about an instructor's academy, so that we could train all the implementers, instructors, and formators on the values of the training and all the contents that we would be teaching our children. And the training academy would also involve all the ethics and all the measures that we need so that our implementers, whether they be from the DepEd, from the AFP, or from the DND, would be guided accordingly and would be given proper orientation and instruction for that matter.
Thank you, Yusek, for that
Mr. Chair,
suggestion.
just one more thing, sir.
Yes, General.
In relation, sir, to the CHED statistics, because I did officially ask CHED for statistics on this before. I'm very much interested in the final statistics, because what they gave me before officially were partial statistics, and I think I've given you a copy of this statistics too, sir, in a graph. And I think the disparity is really not that big. I couldn't just project it, sir. I don't think the disparity is not that wide, no. And of course, CWT still has more enrollees, more graduates, but ROTC enrollment based on our statistics is increasing vis-a-vis the CWTS graduates. So I'm just very much interested in the official and complete statistics on this, because the one you CHED has given me shows the disparity, that the disparity is not that too great. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I have it here. I have also your letter reply to me that what you gave to me is partial. So we need the full statistics so we can really validate these claims, sir.
Mr. Chair, just for the information of everybody, we are preparing our database. We only have graduates on the enrollment. Kaya po siguro partial yan is because we are not really getting the data, but what we have is graduates. But we will adhere, Mr. Chair, and we would like to present that at the time that we present also our assignment on the NSTP update and reviews.
And maybe, Mr. Chair, the numbers has not included yet local colleges because we're not submitting to CHED our graduates. So I'd like in addendum to what General Maid mentioned. Medyo nagulat din ako na malayo yung diferensya ng RO dun sa CWTS. But just one last note, Mr. Chair, maybe the AFP can make use of ROTC as immersion mechanism ng AFP ho. Yung mga iba-ibang organization ng military, they came to me na kung pwedeng bumisita sa amin, magkaroon ng immersion, di ba? Magkaroon ng activities para maunawaan ng mga bata ang kahalagahan ng sandatahan. Mukhang nakikita ho natin na malaki ang role ng ROTC kung imamandatory na natin para nang sa ganoon ay mabago ang pananaw, ang perspektibo ng mga kabataang Pilipino tungkol sa organisasyon. Napakaganda hong venue yung ROTC para magkaroon ng tiwala ang mga kabataan at maunawaan ang role na ginagampanan ho ng sandatahan sa Pilipinas. So I'd like to, of course, call the attention of our officers na sana ho pag in-implement natin to sa pangalawang pagkakataon, mas maunawaan ng mga bata ang role na ginagampanan ng sandatahan.
Right, thank you, Dr. Arcega. Before we terminate, let me just remind everyone, you can still submit to us your position paper based on our discussions this afternoon. The deadline is on or before April 24, that's after Holy Week. We'd like to also request from CHED the statistics, ma'am, na mention you earlier. I think that's I requested actually General Rudil to furnish us with some statistics, but if you can give it to us directly, we'll furnish it to them so that we can harmonize our data. I think what came out of this hearing is we still need to go deeper into possible violations on the protocols that we ratified in the past. And this is concerning the optional protocol to the Convention on the Rights of the Child on the Involvement of Children in Armed Conflict, in which our own country submitted a declaration. No? And that declaration was mentioned earlier by Attorney Reyes. No? And I would like to request from the DND deeper legal analysis on this matter. This is a legal question. And we would like to cover all bases before we sponsor this bill. I am assuming that some senators might raise this, and we would like to understand fully the consequences of this law to the protocol that we ratified. Let's have a deeper legal analysis. Please submit it to us before April 24, on or before April 24. And the same manner with Attorney Reyes, you raised very valid points, Attorney, and we appreciate that. We'd like to work with you also on this bill and help us find some common ground moving forward. I think the interest is there on reinstating it, reinstating mandatory ROTC, but we have to find a common ground that will hopefully not violate any of the protocols that we ratified. No?
Sir, we did submit an extensive legal memorandum on that issue.
Yeah. If you have any points after this discussion, we would welcome that. And definitely, again, let's find a common ground so that we will make this proposal happen. All right. So again, thank you very much for your time. Maraming salamat po for your contribution. And this meeting is suspended.